Hello everybody, my name is Lara and welcome to It's Time to Complain About Nintendo. I was wanting to do a debut before started uploading to this channel, but that hasn't quite worked out. I'm still not sure what I want to do for that video whenever I decide to do it. But hi, I guess. My name is Lara and I'm trying to start this here VTubing channel talking about stuff I want to do for the purposes of the kind of commentary this video is going to be about. I should at least preface some things about myself. I am a long-time Nintendo fan, or I did consider myself a long-time Nintendo fan, and we'll get into that. I'm very into video games and animation, as you can see, to the point that I want to be a game developer myself. I have a deep appreciation and respect for people in the field of animation, game design, game development, that sort of thing, and that's what I kind of want the primary focus of my various channels to be, is talking about what's going on in the industry from both like a casual, I guess, consumer perspective, but also as someone who's been studying game development, not necessarily in the industry, but someone who's had a long history and just kind of keeping up with, just in respect to like the industry at large, I would say. And of course animation too. Animation goes kind of hand in hand with game development, both being like visual mediums, games obviously being the more interactive of the two mediums, and I just have a very huge appreciation for that. And that's kind of, I'd say, the foundational core of this channel, is wanting to show my love and appreciation for video games, game design, art, just discussing those topics and adjacent topics. And I also should probably talk a bit about, like, show off my model a bit. Again, I want to do like a full debut at some point, but yeah, I've been working on this for a few months now. Like, I started actually really early this year, just doing concept, and again, I want to do a video on all that. It's pretty cool, the sort of technical expressions, things you can get out of this. I'm noticing it's dark in here, so I might need to turn on the light. There, that's a bit better. Last video I did a reaction to the Nintendo Direct, and we'll get into that. Since then, I did get a Elite motion controller secondhand, so I'm not sure if it's the best condition, but look at this. Oh, only one. Where's the other one? Wow, hand tracking, look at that. Oh, look at this one, I can do this, look at this. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So that allows for like a wider range of expression. It's not the most reliable. This hand specifically doesn't tend to work the best for whatever reason. Also, I noticed there's some jank in the model there. You can see kind of the elbow. Not sure what that's about. But yeah, there's just a wider range of expression I can do. Like, again, it's not detecting my other hand for some reason. But yeah, I can like gesture, set my hand down on the table. Just kind of do some gestures. That's really cool. And again, all of this, I know, is it's kind of buggy, it's glitchy. I'm very new to all this, just kind of exploring, experimenting. I don't have some like agency helping with all this stuff. I'm just kind of doing this on my own, just kind of exploring VTubing as a medium. It's very interesting. Again, I'd like to do a whole video kind of just talking about this, showcasing the model. Like, it's not like going frame by frame, tediously animating a character, all the facial animations and stuff like that. It's not a frame by frame thing, but you do have to actually put in like the animation work in regards to like the face. All the shape keys had to be manually done, every single expression, all of that had to be manually done over the course of weeks. And I know, honestly, if I was to compare this to anything, I would probably say it's more like puppeteering. I wouldn't call it like full-on animation necessarily, but I would say it does feel in line with something like puppetry, and I think there is a sort of art to that people don't appreciate. In general, I think like the concept, the medium, how you like kind of portray your character, like that's a very fascinating element to the whole thing, and that's something I'd like to talk about eventually anyway. But yeah, I just want to show this off of it, just new technology experimenting with, and it's all like very technical, very complicated, and I would like to do a video kind of delving deeper into that, but that's not what this video is about. I just want to kind of show that off. But yeah, this is not the sort of video I wanted to make, especially early on, because I know it's very contentious. A lot about that's going on in the industry, and also just the world at large is very contentious right now. But I feel like it's reached a point where I feel like I have to throw my hat into the ring to say something, even if I don't necessarily change anyone's mind in anything. That's not necessarily what I'm trying to do. I just feel like I got to get all my thoughts out there into the ether. I need to talk about this. I need to vent about everything that's going on right now in the industry at large, but specifically Nintendo. I think it's fair to say all of us have had like a rocky relationship with Nintendo in some respect. They've done things we love them for, or things we hate them for. But within the past, I'd say the past 5 years, it's kind of descended into more and more distasteful practices, and obviously not in the line necessarily with stuff like EA or Activision, but there's, you know, we'll get into some of that because there's certainly some things to talk about in that respect. But just what I would describe as anti-consumer practices encroaching more and more to a point where I feel like a lot of people, including myself, are being pushed away from Nintendo, like as a brand, either like pushed out like financially, or like out of a sort of like a moral obligation. And I'm not going to try and like push, this is how I think you should feel, or, and if you don't feel this way, like you're a bad person or anything like that. That's not the sort of thing I want to be bringing to this conversation. But I do think it's important to talk about, because it is interesting, as someone who's like been a long time fan of Nintendo, who's looked up to Nintendo for basically all their life, and also like as someone who just has an interest in the industry, like as a someone who has long aspired to be a developer, in part because of companies like Nintendo. Yeah, I've seen there's been a lot of contention within the fan base, people like straight up wanting to boycott Nintendo, and we'll get into my feelings about all that, and people coming up trying to bat for Nintendo, saying, oh, they're not as bad, things could be worse, or they have been worse in one respect or another. And I think that so much of the argument that's happening tends to miss the point or address the full scope of everything bad that Nintendo has done and is doing. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this video today, is talk about it. I could have like wrote some big script, you know, I could have and it's something I've contemplated doing, like making an essay. The thing is, I'm still not at that point where I'm very motivated to sit down and like edit a whole video, make sure every point and I have everything sourced perfectly. I'm just not in that place right now to do something like that. I do want to get to that with like do have a channel dedicated to that sort of thing. But for now, this is just going to be me kind of having a sort of a one-sided discussion with you. Like if you guys leave comments, I'll try to read the comments and even respond to your comments. But this is like a video, so it's just kind of me yelling at the wall and helping me, I guess, process. This is really just a way for me to process all of my grievances with Nintendo, and hopefully eventually arrive at some sort of consensus within myself in terms of like what I want to do as a consumer, as someone who has an interest in Nintendo, like a vested interest as like a long time fan, but also like as a developer who has aspired to be like them, maybe even work with them at some point. And it's a lot of mixed feelings, and I do want to talk about some of that today. I considered doing sort of like a PowerPoint presentation slide. I did not end up throwing anything together for that. I did write a lot of notes though, and I'm just gonna kind of like look at my notes, read off the notes, and then kind of just give my thoughts on things. I might throw some stuff on screen and post for some clarity, but other than that, it's just gonna be me just kind of rambling, and I'd like to know your thoughts in respect to a lot of these things. And there's obviously, I'm not gonna be able to talk about everything Nintendo's ever done, good or bad. But yeah, just feel free to comment below about your thoughts and experiences with Nintendo as a company, or if you have like some thoughts on like the various points I bring up, just feel free to do that. I'm gonna try and keep this discussion fairly open, but I'm gonna be a bit critical of Nintendo because they've pressed me to a point where I feel like I have to be brutally honest, call them out as a company, even if it obviously doesn't, me saying this doesn't lead to anything. I do feel like it's something that at least hope brings out more discussion, and maybe if not directly, does prompt Nintendo to change in some way, like through just more people talking about this stuff. I'm not sure like what else to preface all this with. This is I'm very I'm still getting used to doing videos like this. I'm very like self-conscious. People texting me, oh my gosh, don't distract me right now. Okay, so introductions. Okay, I guess I should preface all of this by saying yeah, I am a long-time Nintendo. My experience with Nintendo began very young. I believe the first Nintendo console I ever owned was the Game Boy Advance. Yeah, I would say I had a purple Game Boy Advance, and not long after that I got a GameCube. I'd say for quite a few years, most of the games I had were just like really shitty licensed games, and I didn't even really know much about Mario. Like the only Mario game I had was Mario Party 4, and so I just kind of thought Mario was just kind of a mascot. I didn't really think anything of Mario until I got Mario. I believe it was either Mario 3 for Game Boy Advance, or it was Super Mario Sunshine. I saw at this like one arcade in a town I not grew up in, but grew up next to. They had this like it's like a daycare, and they had all these CRTs and different consoles. It was so cool. Since then, that place, I don't think they have those anymore, which is a bit of a shame. It's kind of a shadow of its former self. But back in the day, they had all these CRTs hooked up with like PS2, Xbox, GameCube. It was like a dream. It was like a dream to go there. And one of the games was like Mario Sunshine, and it was like nothing I've ever seen before. This game where you just like go like explore this island. You have this like jetpack and clean up graffiti. As a kid, I thought it was chocolate. I thought as a game where you run around, and I'm like, why is Mario, this character from this party game, running around on an island cleaning up chocolate? It was either yeah, I believe it was either Mario Sunshine or Mario 3 was my first Mario I got into and then eventually beat. And I'd say yeah, right after that I got into got into the internet, educating myself on the world of Nintendo. And not long after that, you know, the Wii came out. My parents bought us my family a Wii. I saved up for a 3DS and as well as a Wii U, and got both of those around launch. So I was also like, I was very into like Club Nintendo, the whole like rewards program. There was the whole controversy with like the, not even really controversy at the time, but just like the price of the 3DS, and sales were like, I wouldn't say so bad, but they were pretty disappointing. And Iwata, notably, and we'll get into some of this stuff later, but Iwata famously dropped the price. I think it was within the first year or two, and offered compensation on Club Nintendo. You could like redeem some of like the money you paid up front if you bought the console early, and get like some free games, including Force Sword for the 3DS, which was like a unique, it was not like the version that came with Link to the Past. It was like its own standalone, so it was like a very unique version. I was one of the few people that got that at the time. I was redeeming all the codes that you got with the games. I collected like Mario trading cards. I don't know if anyone remembers those. Back when Mario Brothers Wii came out, they had like these trading cards. And then of course, like I went back and bought like the N64. Also like the Wii Shop, of course. Like when the Wii came out, I got like N64 games on the Wii Shop, but then I also got an N64 at a garage sale, SNES, NES. So basically, I have played or own every home console, I would say, Nintendo's ever made, with the exception of like the Virtual Boy. I've never owned like a DS, like an original DS. I just jumped straight to the 3DS. So there's a lot about the DS I didn't get into. But yeah, like I say, aside from that, I've been there every step of the way with Nintendo. I was there for the Wii U. When it launched, I bought Nintendo Land. I was there for Mario 3D World. I was super into Mario specifically. Eventually started playing more of the Zelda games. There's still a lot I haven't played. Pikmin took me a while to like really get into Pikmin, but when I did, I was super into it. And yeah, of course, I kept up with. Do you guys remember? By the way, this video is going to be a bit all over the place. I'm going to try and keep it concise, but just giving my backstory on like my experience with Nintendo. Do you guys remember like, what was it, like the Nintendo News Channel? Do you remember that on the Wii? And that was I think how I learned about the 3DS coming out, was the Nintendo News Channel. The whole like E3 presentation, showing off the 3DS and the Wii U, and being just marveling at like, what is this future technology where you can like play a handheld game, it's like in 3D without the glasses, or like the Wii U's graphics, seeing the trailer for Zelda Wii U, which was in reality was just a tech demo. We never got that game. What else? There was like Star Fox. I was very excited for Star Fox. Back in the day, on my old channel, I did reactions to like all the Nintendo Directs and stuff like that. Like the passing Iwata, I was broken up about that. I was like, I used to like really look up to Miyamoto, like aspire to be like Miyamoto, and I still respect Miyamoto, but I just, obviously like people think differently, like how they approach games, how they approach like what they feel is most important in a game, how they would design a game. I still really respect Miyamoto, but like it's just one of those things, people like agree and disagree on different things. Eiji Aonuma, another one. What's his first name? I can't remember his first name right now, but Koizumi's obviously someone I've always looked up to. I could go on and on, but yeah, just goes to show you, I want to get this clear that I'm not like some Nintendo hater. I'm not like someone clamoring for them to fail spectacularly and go out of business or anything like that. But I will say that my relationship, those sort of rose-tinted glasses, that magic that I once felt, like in respect to Nintendo, like as a brand and IP, like even through like all the kind of the questionable things they did, like with the Wii U, or the GameCube, like even through that, like I still like super admired them as a company. It didn't really affect that sort of that magical aspiration that I had for Nintendo. But over the past few years, things have gone from just kind of like, the occasional frustration or contention with some like corporate decision or marketing decision, or design decision. It's slowly devolved into, I'd say, like a very unhealthy relationship. And it's not just me. There's people all over that are expressing these same views and sentiments, and there's been a lot of pushback, both on the part of the people that are that are really frustrated with Nintendo. There are some people that are very vocal and very, I don't necessarily want to just say toxic, but like, just like very cynical. And there's people on the other side that are like very like staunchly defending Nintendo. Like there's almost nothing Nintendo could do wrong that would compromise their loyalty to Nintendo as a brand and company, which I don't think is healthy either. I think any company should be held to a high and respectable standard of consumer trust. Nintendo should obviously be listening and respect the not demands but the feedback of their consumers, and I think that is something they've over time drifted away from. And that's that's not to say they haven't ignored fan feedback before, but I think the Switch specifically, the Switch one, it felt like a very deliberate response to the indifference, both the fandom and consumers that are not even like necessarily loyal to Nintendo, just like everyday people, like freaking parents that like buy the new thing for their kid without even really having any sort of sense of brand loyalty or anything like that. Everything about the Wii U, and to the extent the 3DS, but especially the Wii U, the Switch felt like it was a very deliberate response to all that contention that consumers loyal and also casual had with the system. And the Switch, had its own problems, like in power, and I would say the build quality wasn't the best, like the console itself, and obviously like everything with the Joy-Cons, and we'll get into some of that. But overall, it felt like a very calculated response to addressing that concern and at times indifference to Nintendo as a brand, to giving consumers something where everyone could look at it and be like, this is something I need, or something that I would get a lot of use out of, like as a product. The Switch was very appealing. Of course, all the games, the same with the games. There's a lot of indifference to the games that came out on the Wii U and the 3DS, and the Switch felt like a direct response to all of that. Accumulatively, all these little decisions are what led to the Switch being as successful as it was. And that was true with, I would say specifically, the Game Boy and the Wii. Like a lot of people like to look to those and call those flukes, and I don't necessarily think that's even the case. To talk about a bit about this, Nintendo for a time was I would say well known, at least to those that are studied within the industry. I'm not sure what you'd say, like almost like the architectural strategies. Nintendo's thing was, I believe, as one of the lead developers had described, withered technology. Because so much of the industry is not just in respect to the gaming industry, but just the tech industry is led by advancing in technology, in providing more power, making things more compact in some way. Like this is like the new shiny thing, and oftentimes it's the more expensive thing, or at least it's barely coming to meet the price of what came before. And with Nintendo, for a time, they weren't known for doing that. They were known for using everything they learned previously, advancing technology and saying, what can we do with everything we've learned with the NES, the SNES? It's like, how can we utilize this technology? And the Game Boy was really like the first, the execution of this philosophy, and the Game & Watch as well. It's saying, how can we make something that has a wide range of appeal, like a portable handheld. That was not really something that had really been done outside of the Game & Watch, and I forget if Tiger Electronics was a big thing at this time, or if that came after. But Nintendo basically introduced what on the surface was like, wow, this is a really powerful handheld, but in reality it was really underpowered, especially in comparison to everything that came after, and things that were even compared to like the NES and the SNES. But for a handheld, it was, despite its like graphical limitations, didn't have a backlight. It was like this green this green screen color, limited resolution, but it was compact, it was affordable, and that was the big selling point, is using this old technology to make something that was like super portable, super appealing, like something that kids could get a lot of use out of. And of course, like, it launched with Tetris, so it was like appealing to like adults. Not to say like, you know, adults can't enjoy Pokemon or Super Mario Land or things like that, but it was it really shook up the industry, and it was I believe still holds the record for the highest selling portable system of all time. And same with the Wii, like the Wii basically. For those who don't know, the GameCube was actually a super powerful piece of tech when it launched. It was more powerful than I believe both the PS2 and the Actually, I think the Xbox might have been more powerful. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. But its one problem was the compact discs. Like, that was the one Achilles heel that really killed the GameCube, is not being able to like fit movie files, which was like a big thing at the time. Was like with Final Fantasy having pre-rendered cutscenes, that was a big thing. Like the handle, they wanted to make it portable, which is funny. I admire Nintendo's little goofy antics when it comes to design decisions like that. It's something I do admire about the GameCube, is its weirdness. But it was a pretty powerful console. And then when trying to move on to the next console, like, consoles were getting progressively more and more expensive, and Nintendo, they weren't really interested in just making something that's more powerful and more expensive. They were thinking about, for one, they were thinking about affordability, keeping it something that was affordable, that almost that anyone could get into, maybe even buy like casually on a whim, because of how affordable it was. And also they're exploring new ways to play. And of course, one of these ways that it manifested was in the Wii Remote. The Wii Remote, like the motion controller, was one thing. I believe that was like the first thing they invented. Like, again, if I say anything wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. But the motion control of like swinging, and it wasn't like perfect tracking, but like just swinging like a baseball bat, stuff like that. That was something that hadn't really been seen before, at least in a way that was affordable. Like, most of that stuff you'd have to go to like Space World or some shit. Or not Space World, was it Epcot or something, like some big technological showcase, and it was always like a thing that was too far in the future to even like be seen as like a consumer product. But Nintendo managed to like use very simple technology, like accelerometers and things, to make motion control a thing. And then also like the infrared sensor, being able to point at the screen like a TV remote. That was like a huge, like, having all the like the UI in of the Wii, all being represented by TVs and pointing it at it with the Wii remote. It made it easier for like older audiences to like understand how to play games. And obviously not all of them became like hardcore gamers or anything. Some of them used it like for a few weeks, never touched it again, but it shipped systems and provided some very unique play experiences. Going into Wii Sports was a very big one. And the Wii Balance Board was like this weird ass thing where you could Miyamoto basically wanted to make fitness a game. And there's like a documentary out there all about it, and it was like the devs struggled to like make it fun or make it accurate or work, but over trial and error. And it was so weird because Miyamoto was like very not involved with it. Like, he was like, do this, and I'm gonna come in every few months and judge what you're doing, and if I don't like it, I'll say do it over again. And then he would go off and do his own thing. And the devs were just kind of like panicking, trying to figure out a way to make it work, and they eventually did. And it turned out to be like, it was like this groundbreaking thing. Like, no other game has ever played like Wii Fit or Wii Fit Sports. Is it Wii Fit Sports? There's like I might be confusing some games. There's like there are games that use Wii Fit Plus that use like the Wii balance board, and yeah, like the Wii sold a lot of units, or like Mario Kart with the wheel. See if can get hand tracking for this for the wheel. That was incredible. I still like some people make fun of it, but I still love playing Mario Kart Wii with the wheel, even if it's kind of dumb. It's fun to like to turn the I'm trying to get the hand tracking word to turn the wheel as far as you can around a corner. It's so fun. Same with the Switch with the Joy-Cons, and I'll say like the Switch, the Joy-Cons, and like other features it had, like the IR sensor in the Joy-Cons, or the HD rumble. None of that shit really, they never utilized that quite like they did with the Wii, which always bothered me because I think there's a lot of ways they could have if they really tried exploring VR beyond Labo, which I don't think was the way to do it, but it was at least something they tried. It was really just the hybrid nature of bringing, and again, the 3DS had 3D, but you know, you could argue that wasn't really as compelling. But I'd say the Game Boy, the Wii, and the Switch, to me, I don't think those were flukes. You could argue they came at the right time, like almost like scarily like at the perfect time. But almost in every case, Nintendo was leading the industry not through necessarily technological advancements, but using withered technology to make something, a play experience that was compelling but also affordable. And I think that affordability combined with like you can only get this experience at Nintendo, that is what made their brand appealing. And I'd even say like going back like even to like the NES or the SNES, like they were still like those consoles were more comparatively expensive when they came out, but it was still like compared to like it's basically like bringing an arcade experience into the home for like the first time, and that was revolutionary in its own way. So I do consider that. And also like the whole everything with the video game crash, like the video game industry in America was like, that shit was dead. That shit was dead thanks to Atari and like a few other companies just like basically making games that were garbage. And what Nintendo did, like arcade were still doing okay, and in Japan video games were still doing pretty good. It's mostly just America. I don't know how it was in Europe, but like America, games were doing really bad. And Nintendo basically, they came out and saying, okay, we're making a box, a home entertainment system. My fingers are glitching out. A home entertainment system where every game receives our, and tracking's lost again, our seal of approval, our Nintendo seal of approval. So that's how you know whether or not a game is good. And that was like a concern back in the day where it's like you never knew whether or not a game was going to be good or not. And part of the appeal of the Nintendo Entertainment System was like, you knew that you buy a game with the Nintendo seal of approval on it. And obviously over time the seal doesn't mean anything much anymore, especially with like you know, Pokemon, Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, shit like that. But at the time it was like that meant you could trust this company in delivering a compelling product, even if like the games were kind of ball breaking hard. Back in the day, it was still like, I would say the quality was still there, the polish was still there in a way that providing the consumer with basically an arcade level experience or something at least almost comparable to that. And then with the SNES, it was like, this is basically an arcade machine in your house, and all of that was novel. And then same with the like, you know, with the Game Boy Advance, that was basically bringing that power. Like the Game Boy was already kind of like a big thing, but the Game Boy Advance was bringing basically the power of an NES into the palm of your hand. And that's obviously, there were other portable systems before and around that time that were even more powerful, but that was still insane. So yeah, like, I don't know, to me, I don't think any of that was a fluke. I think that was genuinely like Nintendo looking at what the industry was doing and And Nintendo said before, like, they don't look to what the industry is doing. I don't believe that's necessarily true. I think they look to the industry and they see where can we fill a niche from a player perspective. Like, what is something that we haven't done or someone else out there hasn't done? How can we bring that to our players? And that was something that was always admirable about Nintendo. And I think that's remained true basically all the way up until the Switch. I think even the Wii U had it, like the Wii U had its problems. It was underpowered. It was just, the architecture was weird. The two screens, it's like there's just, and also like the games they were putting out for it. Like, we didn't even have Breath of the Wild until the Switch was out. So if you take Breath of the Wild out of the equation, there wasn't even like, they didn't even have like an interesting Metroid on there or anything like that. I mean, Metroid Blast on freaking Nintendo Land, that shit was actually really good. Like, I was waiting, like, why didn't they do something more with that? Like, using the freaking gamepad as the gunship, that was awesome. Never did anything with that really, but and then there's like everything with Star Fox Zero, where they were basically, I'd say the problem with the Wii U, I want to get over this point, but like the problem with the Wii U was they were focusing so much on the gimmick that the play wasn't fun. It's kind of like ironic to the whole thing with Reggie, where it's like, if the game isn't fun, why bother? And that's for a lot of games on the Wii U. They had merit to them, but there was all these little things that just didn't make them very fun. And that was even true with games on the Wii, like Skyward Sword with the motion controls, and the hand holding and all that stuff. But I think around the Switch, that was like, that's where it felt like Nintendo had, everything had kind of crystallized in the most perfect way. They were able to deliver these huge, like, incredibly designed experiences that anyone could get into. They were still comparatively like affordable to other games. This was around the time where a lot of games outside Nintendo, where they were cutting corners. Even games like being ported to the Switch were cutting corners. The AAA industry was seeing a lot of controversy, and Nintendo was consistently, with the exception of Pokemon, like delivering like competent experiences, compelling experiences like that were like playing like nothing else you've ever played before. And the Switch was also like a hub for indie games. That was also a big thing. And also sort of the adaptability of the Switch, where it's a portable system, but then it's also a home console, so it kind of finally bridges those two markets together. That was incredible. That was like an incredible thing. And it's made everything that came after. Oh, I should preface this by saying, like, the Switch is on track to be, I think, I don't think it's surpassed it yet, but it's on track to be the highest grossing system of all time. That's like a big accomplishment. That's not just like that's not a casual thing. Like, that's incredible. And same with its games. Many of its games are some of the highest grossing of all time. And it also gave a chance for a lot of games that didn't perform very well on the Wii U that were still incredible, or probably wouldn't have performed as well on Wii U, like Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8, A Second Chance at Life. That's also incredible. And it also brought Nintendo into a lot of households where maybe like, I'd say like, you know, like you probably would have had a Wii before this, but it still brought Nintendo into a lot of households. I know for sure that haven't even like really played Nintendo before. Like, I know like on the internet there's been a lot of streamers, let's players that's like they've never even really played Nintendo games, but the Switch got them into Nintendo. And that's like an incredible thing. And it makes everything that comes after all that more frustrating. Because I think the Switch, while it was sort of, I'd say the Switch was like almost like the pinnacle of Nintendo's achievements. It was also kind of the rise before the fall. And like, I don't want to like be all doomer about this, but I just want to say I do think things are not looking good, and I'll get into why. But a lot of what's not looking good is not necessarily, and we'll get into like the performance of the Switch 2 so far. it's not just because of that. I think Nintendo's reputation. It's kind of incredible how Nintendo's reputation went from the like the respectability that it has had, both like since the old days, obviously, but up until like the Switch One. I can't think of the exact word. The prestige. They just this high level of prestige that came with owning a Nintendo system, playing Nintendo games. There was this sense of and also like the affordability. There was, I don't know, there was just this. It did feel like the Switch was a response to what we had to say in respect to the Wii U. It did feel like that. Everything like over time, like this again, the Switch One, there was a lot of goodwill built up with Nintendo, but just within the past 5 years, even like prior to this Switch 2's announcement and release, they slowly whittled away at our consumer trust, and that is the crux of what I want to talk about. It's kind of crazy, all that. I don't even know how long I've been talking. How long have I been talking? Almost an hour. And that's just kind of the preface of everything I just wanted to get across about, like, just so you know where I sit with Nintendo, so no one takes that out of context. Like, that is my level of admiration I had for them. And now I want to get into everything, like kind of all the sort of the bad feelings that I have, the contentions I have with them now at a company. Because here's the thing, like I said, I'm someone who's been with Nintendo basically since the beginning, since they've had a Nintendo system in their hands. I've been there to bat for Nintendo. I've loved Nintendo. I bought all of their products. Basically, I had freaking Mario trading cards. I bought the Wii U at launch, and I basically wanted to, it was my dream at some time to work with Nintendo. And over time, you of course come to learn that all is not glamorous in Nintendo Utopia. There's like a lot of things that go on with them just being like an organization that come off as kind of ick, or like drive a wedge between consumer trust. And this isn't something exclusive to Nintendo. I already went into the industry, like there's other people in the industry. I will say, I want to get this across, I think the rest of the industry is far worse is far worse than Nintendo. But it feels like for the first time, I feel like Nintendo is just as bad as a lot of companies in the industry, or at least how they used to be. Like, those companies are a lot worse now, and I feel like Nintendo has slowly been kind of going that way, and it's kind of soured me on them as a company. And for the first time ever in my life, a new Nintendo console is out, and I don't think I want to buy into it. And that's something I never thought I would ever say. Something I ever would want to say. And I mean, I don't want to say it, but it's just, it's something that I'm at that point where I'm like, there's not enough here for me to want to buy into the console. And I'm not necessarily just talking about like waiting until like more games come out or something. I think just their practices as a company have soured me in wanting to buy into their products as a company. And I'm not the only one in this. There's been like a movement, and there's been a lot of pushback, obviously, from like diehard Nintendo fans, like calling them haters. But no, a lot of these people were, and like, yeah, some are aggressive and cynical, and I'm not necessarily saying that's like, oh, that's necessarily a bad thing or whatever. But people are free to feel how they want to feel. But a lot of people like me, who have always had this this love and respect and appreciation for Nintendo, are feeling disincentivized to buy into the new system. And again, I was saying, it's not just me. My roommates, one of my roommates is like super into Nintendo. They super love The Legend of Zelda. It's like their favorite franchise, has been since they were a kid. And now, and we'll get into the cost, okay, of the Switch 2 and this game. We'll get into all that. But because of that cost, it would be sort of a sort of group financial decision, with all the awfulness in the world going on. There's not a lot of money to go around. So it's kind of like a group decision. Like, do we want to get this thing or that thing? And for the first time ever, it's like, we don't think we want to buy into a Nintendo console. That's like a big thing. That's not like a casual, that's not a casual thing for someone who's basically so much of the formative memories have been built on this company, these works of art that these developers have made. It's not a decision we make lightly, but it's a decision we've arrived at. And I think that precedent, that is, again, not just in respect to me or respect to my friend or respect to, like, it's just everywhere. Like, not just even people online, just casual consumers are looking at the price of the system, the price of the games and other things Nintendo's doing, and they're saying, no, that's not normal. That's not a good thing. And that's the crux of what I want to get into today. And I realize this has been going on for a while, just prefacing all that. But I do feel like all of that is necessary to say, because if I just jumped into the negative, people would be like, oh, you're just being negative. Hate Nintendo. Never liked Nintendo. You're a big fan or whatever. And I don't want to hear any of that. That to me is like a different form of cynicism that I think is just as egregious, if you want to call it that, as people just hating Nintendo to hate Nintendo. I'd argue there's more grounds to hate Nintendo than there is grounds to defend Nintendo at this point. Yeah, and so I've been wanting to make this video for a very long time now. I again considered scripting this. I did not, but I did write down a lot of things that I just want to kind of talk about off the cuff, and we'll see when I edit this down how coherent any of this comes across. And I might do some fancy editing to showcase some of my talking points. But I think the sort of question I want to pose, and hopefully I'll remember to answer it by the end, I'm still like kind of evaluating my thoughts on everything. It's kind of the whole point of this video, is to kind of come to terms with my thoughts on a lot of these things. And that sort of pivotal question that's like in my head and a lot of people's heads right now is, should I boycott Nintendo? Should other people be boycotting Nintendo right now? I want to make it clear, I don't want to push any of that onto you, but I do think it's like, it is something we should be talking about. The fact that it's even a conversation at all, I think rather it's not necessarily what I think you should do. It's more so I think it's important to just talk about the fact that there's this conversation happening at all, and a lot of the time it isn't as constructive as I think it should be. So that's what I want to do today. Sorry if this video is kind of a mess. So I guess sort of the big controversies, I don't know where to really start with. I guess we should start with I guess before, let's not jump straight into this Switch 2. Let's jump into one of the things that has really been a point of contention for the community, and that is media preservation. So basically from the beginning, Nintendo has obviously had a vested interest in, or I mean against, piracy. They've had this, not even necessarily piracy, I don't think piracy is all the right word in all instances to even use. In fact, just against media preservation. Not even people that are looking to distribute it, but just like preserve or otherwise like play interface with media that Nintendo has. Not necessarily just games that are currently available for sale, and is obviously like depriving Nintendo of some money when you go out and you emulate games that Nintendo isn't supporting, that haven't been supported for years, not even years, entire decades. Of course, there's the obvious ones like DS and 3DS games. Like there was some 3DS support on the Wii U, but of course you had to get a Wii U for that. And now, obviously now that the Wii U's have been discontinued and that service is shut down, you can't get those DS games. And obviously you can't get DS games for the DS because they've discontinued those as well. And even on the 3DS, something I was really excited for when the Wii U came out. I was like, oh, this is going to be the hybrid platform, the platform that supports both obviously console games, but also games from their portable line. To me, that was always like super compelling, and they never did. To my knowledge, there were never games for 3DS that also came out on Wii U, despite it being a console with 2 screens, and it, I assume, being more than capable of running games for the 3DS. They never did. And once the Switch came around, a lot of people were hoping, okay, they're gonna move all of this stuff to the Switch, right? All the games, there was a lot of Pokemon games from the DS, 3DS, and Game Boy that, and it's still not even all of them, that were on the 3DS and Wii U eShop. And Nintendo did not carry those over. In fact, to this day, you still cannot buy legacy Pokemon games, including like the original, like even the original ones that released on Game Boy, red, blue, yellow, and then color and Game Boy Advance, all that stuff. You can't, to this day, even though Nintendo has had all this time with their Switch, and you can't say, oh, there would be complications. No, you can freaking emulate this shit on your phone. They still haven't provided an official way to play these games. If you want to play these games that are like, even though they've printed, of course, millions of copies, if you want to play these games, what you have to do, if you want to play it in a legal way, you have to track down the console that it originally was made for. You have to track down the game in respect to that console, and these games sell for more than the original sell price. Like, so many of these games in box, and even not in box, sell for hundreds of dollars, and most people, get this, aren't willing and can't just throw hundreds of dollars at a whim to play some 10-20-year-old Pokemon game that Nintendo obviously should just be supporting on their own. And you know, maybe it's not just Nintendo, it could be like the Pokemon company being weird, but I do believe Nintendo, being a majority shareholder in the Pokemon company, should be pressuring them to do this. And I have theories as to why they haven't re-released these games. It's possible they're trying to build up a service, but again, it's been like 8 years since the launch of the Switch. They still haven't put these games on the Switch. Like, we even have Nintendo Online, so it's like, are they wanting to make like a dedicated Pokemon service where you pay like $100 a year to have access to all or some of the games? Like, I don't know what their headspace is for this, but the fact of the matter is, like, I think it's wrong that so many people are basically denied of a way of playing these games officially. It feels gross that there's not an official way for them to do this, and the only way Nintendo seems interested in supporting these games is in really shitty remakes. Not even competent remakes. And obviously a lot of people just simply resort to emulation because of that. And Nintendo, despite not providing an official way to play these games, comes down on providers of these services, even if they aren't necessarily making money from providing these ROMs or whatever. Nintendo's still coming down on them, coming down on people who emulate these games. And of course, it's not just Pokemon. There's obviously a whole slew of games from the GameCube, and yes, they have recently added GameCube to Switch 2. But again, you have to have Switch 2 specifically. They're not bringing that over to Switch 1. You have to have, if you want to play GameCube, you have to subscribe to this weird service that isn't even very good. The games aren't, historically haven't been well optimized or accurate to the original play experience. And of course, there's games that have still, to this day, for over 20 years, still haven't been brought back in any official capacity. Like, I think back to, did you know there was like a Zelda game for the Satellaview? To my knowledge, that game still hasn't been brought back to any official capacity. Basically, it was, I believe it was kind of like a remake or maybe a spin on A Link to the Past. And it had like, it was made for the SNES. If you don't understand what the Satellaview was, it was basically like some weird broadcast service. It was like DLC, like something you bought, and you had a game beamed in from satellite. Sorry, my hand tracking is not working. Like, what the frick? I'm trying to gesture. It's from satellite. Into your SNES, a Super Famicom, and it had voice acting. That was like a crazy thing that you like a game on Famicom with voice acting. That's insane. And to my knowledge, this game, despite Nintendo acknowledging the Satellaview and like costumes in Mario Odyssey and some other things, those games on Satellaview have never been officially ported over. Obviously, there's a lot of there's other stuff like Mother. There's the Mother series, which to this day have still not received official translations. And every time there's like been some sort of fan initiative, there's been like Nintendo's done something really shitty that's like, oh, my hand got real fucked up there. You see that? come between consumers and the ability to play this piece of history. Like games are, like I didn't get into it before, but like games are works of art, history that take like years to make, labors of love. And for whatever reason, Nintendo, like as a company, decides that like once a game is made, you know, after it's made, however much money they decide they want from it, they're not obligated to support you as the consumer wanting to experience that work of art. And it's, I don't know, it's just gross to me. It's like, and I know it is daunting to like, how would you even provide all of those games, all of those services like available in like every language, in every territory, because you know Nintendo has a massive library. And I think there are ways in which that could be done, even if it's like optimal for every single use case. There's still an effort they could be making beyond like the shitty NSO service, which is not very good, and they aren't doing that. It feels like they're doing the bare minimum, and in fact, we are actually in a worse position, I would argue, than we were back with, like, you know, there was the Wii Virtual Console, and there was like a lot of games that were not available on the Wii Virtual Console, and there's of course region locking and all that stuff, though Switch wasn't region locked, which was very cool. But Wii Virtual Console, they would like specifically hire like really skilled programmers to make the games run not necessarily like as authentic as possible, but like as optimally. If it felt like this, they had a lot of care put into them, like specifically like the Wii release of Ocarina of Time, the Wii release of like Mario 64, Star Fox 64. Like I could go on. Like they didn't have GameCube and, you know, other things that the Switch 2 now has. I haven't played them to see how like they perform or anything like that. But, and even backwards compatibility, like we had backwards compatibility on the Game Boy Advance. Sorry, did we have backwards compatibility on the SNES? Why is my hand glitched now? I think we did. And then, of course, backwards compatibility on the I guess on the GameCube with Game Boy, through like the Game Boy player. The Wii could play GameCube games. The Wii U could play Wii games. But of course, I understand that the Switch, you can't fit a fucking disc inside a portable console. They couldn't fit a disc drive in there, like big surprise. But they could have, like, they had these games already, like on the Wii Digital Store and the Wii U Digital Store. We had Mario Galaxy, and we'll get to that, don't worry. They had Mario Galaxy on the Wii and Wii U store. You could like download those games. And then the Switch comes around, and you're just not allowed. You're just not allowed to play these like pivotal key components of Nintendo's history, of gaming history. It's just not allowed. Why? Because Nintendo decides you just can't. And you know, people will have opinions, I think, about whether or not they're obligated, like they owe us that. I think to some extent they do. Like if you're coming out after people for doing emulation, then you should be providing a service that meets or exceeds the expectations of fan emulation. Like that's just, I feel like that should be like the objective reality. Otherwise, you're coming down on them for wanting to play your games that you are not supporting or providing a way to play in any official capacity, or the way you are providing is shit. Is insufficient. Like we all know the whole drama that came out with the Switch version of Ocarina of Time, how so many things about it were messed up, and I don't even know if all of them are fixed. Like I know the input lag was pretty bad. There's obviously, of course, like the texture work was bad. There's a lot of like panning textures that were bad. The colors were wrong. Just a lot of stuff like that also lag. Like I'm pretty sure Paper Mario 64 still has this glitch where if you open the pause menu to like look at badges and things, and you have to go into this menu a lot. It's the way you switch, one of the ways you switch your partners. You equip and unequip badges, and the game runs at like half the frame rate whenever you open the menu, and this was not present in the original or Wii versions. And for whatever reason, I don't think it's ever been fixed. Correct me on that if it's been fixed. Last time I played it, which was like a few months ago, it was still a problem. And it makes the game, like, whether or not that's unplayable, that's, you know, for you to decide as a player. For me, it's like, I don't want to play this inferior version where the game runs at half speed and I'm just trying to equip a badge. Stuff like that. Let me look at my notes here. And of course, like something I bring up in the previous video in the Nintendo Direct, it's like, I think while it doesn't make sense for Nintendo to bring back the GameCube or the Wii or the Wii U or stuff like that, it's like, why would they bring them back? I don't see a market for them to like bring back that like that hardware, that physical architecture. I 100% think they would have a lot to gain from bringing back some of the portable systems. Specifically, I think the Game Boy, or I would say the Game Boy Advance, even like releasing a new Game Boy Advance SP with like a backlight, a better screen, stuff like that. But it's still you know, the same withered technology and re-releasing cartridges. You can even have like a digital store, like if you want it. You can even have like it connects to the internet now, and you can download these games. You can have a micro SD card or whatever the frick. But a lot of people like the tangibility of owning their games, and that's again something I'll get into. And a lot of people say, oh, this is like, Nintendo couldn't do this, or wouldn't be worth it to them to re-release the Game Boy, because that's like that's technology they don't have that anymore. People aren't making those components anymore. And I don't think that's all true. There's still old technology being made today. There's still manufacturing technology that was made in the 2000s, but like updated slightly, but like still uses the same sort of primitive physical parts and all that stuff. But it's like, you're telling me Nintendo, with all of their resources, where they can basically create this big shiny new system using all the latest and greatest technology from Nvidia and all that stuff, you're telling me they also can't like commission some smaller company to use their experience to, and also like we have the original Game Boys, we can like look at their boards and shit and see how they were made. You're telling me they couldn't, if they set their minds to it, re-release the Game Boy? I think that's a load of garbage. That they wouldn't be able to do that. Same with the cartridges. You're telling me like they're manufacturing, they already manufacture their own custom cartridges. You're telling me they couldn't just make either like remake like the technology of the original cartridges, or something that's an analog enough where it still works the same, but maybe it has like better battery or whatever for saves and, you know, stuff like that. You're telling me they couldn't do that? I sincerely don't see why you wouldn't think that is possible when they could announce they announced like, sure, there's no components in it, but they just re-released like the Virtual Boy Oh, my hand is glitching. You see that shit? And it's the wrong hand. Why is that happening? The Virtual Boy. It's just like the shell, and you put the Switch 2 inside, and it's dumb. Like, you can watch that video if you want more of my thoughts on it. It's dumb. But it's like, they're willing to do that. And I'm so confused on who they think is going to buy that. And it's like, if they are willing to do that, and I know they don't think it's gonna be it's not gonna, you know, sell millions of units. Honestly, I'd be surprised if this sold 400,000 units. They're willing to put aside the money and resources for that, but they couldn't re-release the Game Boy, even if it's not like identical, but just even like upgraded in some way. Oh yeah, I should probably get to my point in saying, like, this would be one way where they could bring back some of those classic games, but also they would be extremely accessible. Again, going back to withered technology, Nintendo using technology and their experience of the past to provide to a market that was previously untapped. And I think kids today, like, kids don't have a lot of money. We'll get into like financial stuff in a bit, but like, kids don't have a lot of money. In fact, people in general today don't have a lot of money, but they still obviously care about games and nostalgia. People are still buying into Nintendo, and we'll see how well the Switch 2 performs with everything going on with it. But you're telling me if they sold, remade, and started selling again Game Boys, whether you like download the games from the internet or they sell physical cartridges again, you're telling me people wouldn't buy that? You're telling me that kids with their very limited pocket money and parents who are very like stingy about like what they decide to buy their kids, you're telling me they wouldn't buy into that? I think that's ludicrous. I think that is like a huge untapped market that Nintendo could be buying into. And of course, it's already a market, I would argue, because there are already bootleg consoles out there. Like, kids already have phones and stuff, and you could argue, like, you know, kids have phones and there's emulation, so kids wouldn't, and even like adults who are fans of Pokemon wouldn't buy a Game Boy because they can just emulate on the phone. I don't believe that. I believe there is something to the tactical feeling, the knowing that this is a product that was designed to do this thing, and it's going to have a long life. Like, we built it, we tested it, and this is proven and tested technology. I think that has a place, and that is a way Nintendo could be right now, and honestly years ago probably should have done, though I think now is probably the best time if they were ever to do something like that. But with the way Nintendo's going, honestly, I don't think they ever will. There is this huge opportunity, and both for like Nintendo as a company and also like consumers are strapped for money, but they also want to experience games, as especially kids nowadays probably have less money than they ever had before, and and we'll get into it, but basically they're being pushed out of an entire market. And I don't know, that's just like one way where I think Nintendo could be doing a bit harder. But obviously, like, all of this, like everything, the entire situation is really just made worse because of the price of the Switch 2, and we'll get into all that. But I guess like I should move on to, yeah, okay, so this kind of I guess this is kind of a good transition. This transitions right into one of the problems, and it carries into NSO and some other things, and it's that Nintendo is, for whatever reason, a company that's very stingy about price retention. I don't know if there's another word for this, but basically what I mean is other companies will produce a game, and you know, this game can sell a lot of units, it cannot sell a lot of units, but years down the line this game goes on sale, and it tends to stay on sale for years, and its sale price usually gets lower and lower. Sometimes it drops by a very substantial amount. I remember only a few years into the release of Horizon Zero Dawn, I bought that game when it first released for around $60, and only like a few years in, this game it was like $30. and then I think the price even dropped even lower with the DLC that came out. Like, so it was like an $80 value for only like 20 or $30. Now, obviously, there are other games you can look at, like the Kingdom Hearts collection, which is like a remaster of all the games. I mean, some of them aren't like fully in there. They're like basically cutscene movies. But for the most part, you get like 6 games, I think, in the full collection. You get 6 entire video games, full video games, the entire thing, including content that wasn't even in the original games that was content that was exclusive to Japan, and like 4K, like originally it released on PSP, and you know there's a bunch of tangential stuff with that, but it's like now it's like you can get it 4K, 60 FPS, all HD textures. There are AI upscaled, so it's not like the best, but you know, like it is a enhanced experience, and there's like some quality of life features here and there. The fact that you can like launch them all from one menu is really cool. And again, like there's these movies that were like made for the collection, so they were technically new content if you want to see them that way. Whether or not you like the movies is a whole thing, but all of that, I think that launched for I think $60. I mean, technically they released on PSP first in different parts. It was kind of like you got part 1 of the series, part 2, and then the sort of like Dream Drop Distance and other games on the PS4, and they brought the other games over to PS4. But like the all-in-one collection, basically all these games, not even like the base versions, these remastered versions with all the extra content, and some new content. In fact, they put new cutscenes into some of the games. Like I think it was like $60. And then not even like a few years later, like right now, you can get, I believe it's the all-in-one. No, sorry, you can get the Story So Far collection, which is all the games right up to 3. You can get that for like $24. $24. You can get like 6 entire video games over like 20 years of history, for $24. And these aren't like little retro games. These are like full-fledged RPGs. $24. And then with Kingdom Hearts 3 in the all-in-one bundle, I think it's like, it's almost always on sale for like $30-something. So it's like, you can get all of that for like around $30. Mario Galaxy 1 and we're getting into it. Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, when they came out, I think they were like, I don't want to misquote, I think they were like $49 when they came out on the Wii. And that was something that I really appreciated back then about Nintendo, is a lot of their games were like pretty affordable. Again, the consoles themselves were affordable, but they also kept the price of the games like $49. What with the 3DS, I believe the 3DS games were $39. And then going up to the Switch, it was $60. And I'm pretty sure Wii U games were also $60. But like, it still felt like that was like a fair price. And we'll get into inflation and why that's not a good excuse in a bit. But Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, when they released, like, I believe it was $49 when they launched. A few years after they were released on the Wii, Nintendo re-released them as Nintendo Selects. And Nintendo Selects, for you guys that don't know or don't remember, were Nintendo games that Nintendo would put on sort of like a not a bargain sale. It wasn't like a temporary sale. It was like a best of. And they, to get into more people's hands, they put these highly respected games, not even just like side games, literally there's flagship games on sale for like half the price. Like some of these, I think, what was it? Was it Super Paper Mario? Was it $15? It was like $15 or $19. Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, $19 on the Wii. $19. You go forward to and then I'm trying to remember if Mario Galaxy was also on the Wii Shop. Like you could download it as well for like $19. I think so. It for sure was on the Wii U eShop, and you could download that for I believe that was even lower. I believe it was $15. It might still be $20. I should have wrote that down. Under $20 for one of the games. And then of course they also had these games on like in other territories. They like throw this on the freaking like Tegra TV thing in China. I don't know, remember if you remember that. Like you could get Mario Galaxy on these weird China TV boxes. It was a weird thing. And of course, fast forward to the Switch, you can't download, even though they had these games accessible on the Wii and Wii U eShops, or had them on Nintendo Selects. You can't download them now. That was frustrating, but we were like, okay, maybe they're gonna do some sort of remake or like remaster, and they end up doing a remaster for a few Mario games through 3D All-Stars. And of course, that released with a lot of contention because, for one, it was a very subpar remaster. Not all of Mario 64 wasn't in widescreen, I believe. Like a lot of the textures were upscaled, but I don't even know if the textures in Mario Sunshine were upscaled. And they were in a high resolution, still not even the highest resolution they could be. Like emulation was already years ahead of them, and so that was very disappointing. But also the collection didn't include Galaxy 2. Galaxy 2 was omitted from this collection, and this is the only way to get Galaxy. I forget if the Wii U shop was shut down at the time or that was after, but this was the only way to get it. And it was, I believe it was $60. It was $60 for Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy. And you could make arguments for the price. I think it was overpriced for what we got. But the real problem with it wasn't even like, here's how we are supporting these games now into the future, is through this collection. Maybe we'll release Galaxy 2 separately. No, what they did was, this was a temporary sort of commemorative release. Once it was over, like you could still play the games if you bought it at the time, and like there was some still in stock at the store for quite a while actually. There was quite a few stores that had them sitting around for over 2 years, I think. But within only like a few months or a year, they discontinued production of Mario 3 All-Stars. So it's like, even in this subpar state, you still aren't even like presenting us with a official means of playing games critical to Nintendo's history, to the industry. And that's still like Galaxy 1. That was still only how you would play like Galaxy 1 and Sunshine and 64. You still couldn't play Galaxy 2. It was omitted from the collection. And it was like that for years until like, okay, we're finally getting these games. Now that the Switch 2 is out, we're getting them. I believe it is releasing for Switch 1 and Switch 2. And I want to clarify, you aren't getting Mario Sunshine in this bundle. Like, as far as I know, there's still no official way to... I don't think it's on the Switch 2 GameCube virtual NSO thing. I don't think it's part of that. So there's still no way to get Sunshine, but you can get Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, and they've done a few things. They've like actually redone a lot of the textures, which is interesting, and I think a lot of them actually look worse. In fact, some have completely removed like any sense of like visible texture at all. It's just kind of solid color. It looks really weird that some planets are just kind of like a solid brown now instead of having patterns on them. It's really weird. High resolution. They've also changed the arrangement of some of the game objects in stuff in certain scenes. It's strange. I'm almost surprised they didn't change Mario's model. If they're doing all that, I'm like, oh, they're gonna change Mario's model, assuredly make it more polished. No. So that's interesting. But it's like, okay, at least we're finally getting Galaxy 1 and 2, one package, 2 games. These games are now like, I believe Mario Galaxy 1 is 18 years old. Mario Galaxy 2 is 16 years old. These are some old ass classics now. And, but it's nice we're finally getting them. And what is Nintendo, what's the retail price Nintendo marks them for? $70. $70. Not even $60. $70. And I believe, I don't want to be misquoting, I'm pretty sure. So what's even worse about this, you can buy these games separately. And that sounds good. But here's the thing. Buying them separately, it's actually more expensive for whatever reason. And I believe you can only do it digitally anyway. So it's like there's no cost. There's basically no cost. Nintendo owns the platform of the eShop. Like that's entirely their thing. It's like Steam. They get all the money from that. In fact, it's better than Steam. They get all the money because they make the software and they make the games, or sorry, the platform. So they get all the money, and they are charging $35 or $30. Should I look it up? We'll look it up. Yep. Purchase separately, $40. $40. $40 to buy these games. Why is one of my hands not working when I'm doing gestures? One of these games, $40. Mario Galaxy 1 is 18 years old. Mario Galaxy 2 is 16 years old. When these games released on the Switch, the Wii, yeah, they were like, I believe it was $49 when they released new. Like this was 100%, this was like a new AAA release. That makes sense. Years after the fact, the price came down to $20. It might even been $15. I don't exactly remember if that's correct, but it's like at the very least $20. You could download them digitally or even buy it physically for $20. Now, now you go to the Switch shop, Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, $40 each. That is gross, and I don't think there's any excuse you can make for why that isn't gross. And I know people are gonna say, but inflation. I'm gonna get to that. I don't want to get into it just yet. Oh yeah, but I do want to say, like, this isn't a one-off thing. The fact that this is happening at all is already gross. I remember back when Tears of the Kingdom was $70, and that's a new game, and that's more understandable and at the scope. Why is my hand being weird? At the scope, that is at the very least kind of understandable at the scope and the amount of dev time it had, and the fact that it was like a bigger game, and arguments about inflation and all that stuff. And I think it's at least you could make an argument for that. But for games that have already sold millions of units multiple times over, both with their original release, their like re-release as a discounted game, like on different platforms as a legacy title, and then now releasing it for, what is this? Is this the fourth time it's been released? I think it's the third time it's been re-released. Galaxy 1 anyway. And it's $40 each. I think it's setting up a bad precedent, especially because this is the actual point I wanted to get into, and I got distracted a bit. Price retention. Nintendo believes, corporate Nintendo believes anyway, that Nintendo's games are always worth full price, even years after they have sold. Like back in the day, I would say that wasn't the case, like because they actually did lower the price of a lot of their games. But I would say around the Wii U era and even the 3DS era, games stopped going on sale for as low as they did. And by the time the Switch came out, like Breath of the Wild releases, and it's like $60. And there was times where it was discounted, and I believe you could actually get like a sort of like, and maybe this wasn't retail price, but it was like a version of Breath of the Wild that came with a map, and it was like on discount. And that was like crazy. I wish I picked it up because I don't think you can get that map anymore. I mean, I have a different Breath of the Wild map that is also official, but like this was like a smaller map, and that like came with like markers and things. It was pretty interesting. But Nintendo, it's been clear, and Nintendo's actually made a statement about this. Like, maybe I'll put it on screen if I can find it or not, but like, they made a statement where going forward, they're going to be pricing their games based on what they think the experience offers. Like how much like dev time went into the experience and all that stuff, and they will basically sell it for what they feel is like an appropriate price, by which they mean if they think they can sell it for more, in the case of like how it was sold originally when it was like remastered and sold previously, if they think they can get more money for it, they will charge more money for it. And this is very scary going forward, because again, Tears of the Kingdom was already like a big thing, like, oh my god, they're raising the price for games, and people were like, oh no, and Nintendo themselves were like, oh no, this is just like, this is gonna be a rare thing, like we charge $70 for some games. We think like warrant it, like variable pricing, that was the word they used, variable pricing. Of course, Switch 2 rolls around, and I'll get to this, I guess, in a bit, but like all the games are now $70, including games that aren't even new games. This is just like a collection of 2 games. Previously, you could get for $40, both of them together, like on the Wii U. Now, they're $40 each if you buy them separately, or $70 if you buy them in one package. And that feels really gross to me, because I'll get into prices more and more of my opinion on this, but I just wanted to say that is like one point of contention. This sort of artificial, that's what I want to say, this artificial retention, like Nintendo believes if they can sell it for this price, that should be the price, and going forward they believe their games should remain at that price. And part of this isn't just like Nintendo never putting their games on sale, because there was a time where they did do that, at least with the games that were releasing at the time. But because Nintendo games have such a big legacy, because they're popular, like you would back in the day, maybe like way back, you could buy games used, or buy games like go retro game hunting, and you could get a good deal. You could get like a GameCube for $20. I remember that wasn't even a few years ago. You could go into a Goodwill, find a GameCube, and buy it for $20. That was crazy. You could find games. I remember I bought Luigi's Mansion for like $19. Now it's like $80 on eBay, because that sort of price retention that games have, not just because of players' love and desire for these games, trying to chase down these games, whether they've played them before or not, trying to get a hold of these games. Nintendo artificial scarcity, I would almost say, disinterest in media preservation when it comes to certain games. Like at a certain point, like every generation, there's not a way to play the games from the previous generation or a few generations ago. 3D All-Stars especially, like this is a re-release, this is a big deal, it's Mario's anniversary, decent way to play the games if you aren't too bothered by certain things here and there. They decide this is a limited release and we're gonna take it away. It's just another form of that artificial scarcity, that artificial that price retention, trying to keep this illusion that, oh, our games are like this coveted thing, and for that reason they always have to be as much money as we can squeeze out of you. And that to me is just really gross and in concerning going forward into the next generation, where I would think Nintendo would actually be trying to lower the price of Switch games to make, again, going back to what I was saying before about like vintage withered technology, even like there was a time where they would continue selling their consoles and their games, and they would, maybe lower the price. They aren't doing that anymore. In fact, the price of the older not the older games, but the older consoles have actually gone up. Accessories for the older consoles for Switch 1 has gone up, and we'll get to that. And there's a lot of this, like people saying like, oh, well, that's just inflation. oh, if you don't want to pay that much, don't buy it. And that's like all of that is a load of baloney. And I guess, I mean, I'm wondering how much I should jump around here, but perhaps it's time that we talk a bit about the Switch 2 pricing. I wanted to save it for the end, but I realized like I've been going on a while and I haven't really talked about my thoughts on like everything about the pricing situation, and it's kind of important. So the price of Switch 2, I want to make clear that my contention with Nintendo's whole pricing strategy right now is not with the price of Nintendo Switch 2, like the console itself necessarily. Like $450 is a hard pill to swallow. That's honestly not as bad as it could be, and in fact it's comparable to other systems of a launch for a similar price and systems that are currently out there. Like I still believe it's like one of the cheaper options out there, at least in respect to the console, and it is also a hybrid, so you are getting sort of that 2-in-1 that sort of experience. You can play handheld or hooked up to your TV, and it's got to be like competent at both, and like it's all new hardware, architecture, everything. So it's like I can put my reservations for that aside. Like as long as like everything else within the ecosystem feels fair, like that is a pill I'm wanting to swallow. The problem is that isn't the case, and this is where we get into probably my biggest contentions, and we'll get into other stuff, but like my biggest contention with Nintendo's how would you say financial strategy right now, and that is the price hike of games. Basically across the board, all of Nintendo's games on the Switch 2 cost substantially more. For new games that are like original to Switch 2, they cost $70. They have hiked up in price from $60, they are now $70. But this is also the case with Switch 1 games, which are getting like a patch, like maybe it's a small performance patch, maybe you get a little bit of extra content in there, and it's, you know, kind of not even like anything too substantial in some cases. This supplementary material to Nintendo is like, okay, this game that is on Switch 1, which in some cases was already, and we're getting back into that price retention thing, like with Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild launched for $60 on the original Nintendo Switch, and there were times I think where you could get it on sale for like $49 on the eShop or something like that. On Switch 2, the Switch 2 version of Zelda Breath of the Wild is $70. This is a game that released 8 years ago. This is a Wii U game. I need to make this clear. This is a game that was made for the Wii U. It was like close to the end of development. It was like brought over to the Switch to like as a launch title, and it was like changed a bit. Obviously, it was like optimized. Optimized is a word. It had some features removed that were going to be in the Wii U version. Like those were just omitted from the game, like gamepad specific features that were removed. But this game is like, for all intents and purposes, this is a Wii U game that didn't really have anything that much different in the Switch version. It was basically the same game, just higher resolution. That is selling new now for $70. There is new content, but it's basically like you can like have a QR code for your no, that's Tears of the Kingdom. What is new in the Switch 1 version of Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild? I'm drawing a blank. I don't even know. It's $70 for an 8-year-old game. New $70. They're pretending it's brand new. Then Tears of the Kingdom, which launched for $70 on the Switch 1, which was already like, that was already like, ooh, that's kind of scary. It is now $80 on Switch 2 and it comes with some supplementary, I can't speak, supplementary material, and that material is basically the phone. You can get a phone app on your real phone, and you can like track some quests on your phone, I guess, and it's like you can listen to audio messages left from Zelda if you go to there and open the app. And it's not like they added this stuff in the game. It's like you have to have your app open on your phone and hear it come out of your phone. It's really weird and dumb. $80. Like you could argue this is a new game, and I think there is, okay, I will say, I think they did updo the textures, like the textures in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I think they kind of remastered the textures. They also changed like the distribution of foliage. That was something I noticed. It's like a slight visual overhaul. Otherwise, basically indistinguishable if you don't have them side by side. And both of these games are a few years old now. Breath of the Wild is a Wii U game. $70. That's ridiculous. And it's not just those. Basically, every other Switch 2 version of an existing game is either $70 or it's like otherwise increased by like price and like by $10. And it's not even just that. The price of accessories for Switch 2. Sorry, not even Switch 2. The price of Switch 1 accessories, including the price of the original Switch, have also gone up in price. So this whole time, if you were waiting to jump onto Switch 1 when Switch 2 came out because it's like get a price reduction, sorry, the opposite happened. It is now more expensive. And the excuse that people are going to be jumping to, that are typing in the comments, is that, oh, it's the tariffs. It's the tariffs. And like, hey, we can call the orange man an idiot all day. And like, I'm not going to say it's not a factor, because I believe it is. I believe it is a factor. And people are also going to bring up inflation. Inflation's been going up for years and years, and they're going to say, oh, if you think about it, we're technically paying less than we've ever paid for games. Like, based on the cost of the dollar, we're paying less than we've ever paid. And here's the thing, both of those sentiments are wrong, and I'm going to get into it. I mean, I don't think they're not a component. They are a component. Everything that affects our finances and Nintendo's finances, those are components. But Nintendo could price these games at whatever price. Nintendo is literally the richest company in Japan. Like, aside from the banks, I guess. I'm not sure. There might be some other company, but from what I understand, software, technology, hardware, that stuff like that, they are the richest in all of Japan. And they're also one of like the richest in the world, but obviously there's a lot of very rich companies in the world. More exploitative companies, obviously, in the world, especially in America. And if Nintendo wanted, they could charge, literally, they make tens of, not millions, tens of billions of dollars annually. Tens of billions of dollars annually. If they wanted to, they could. They were already selling Nintendo games at $60, and they weren't hurting. Again, billions of dollars annually. Annually, I'm going to enunciate this for you. $60 for, and I thought that was like that everyone kind of agreed that was a fair price. Some people obviously, had to, that was a bit of a pill to swallow. You had to fork over a bit more money if you like didn't make as much income, but it still felt like a fair price. If Nintendo wanted to, again, because they had put games on sale before, like during the Wii era, which to be fair was like a very profitable era, like a big sort of business boom for a lot of people, a lot of companies and industries. If Nintendo wanted to, they could put these games on sale. They could launch them for $45. And do I think they should? Not necessarily, but it's like, if they wanted to, they could. Would it hurt them? Contrary to what some people want to say, no, it would not. It would not remotely damage their, like, yes, they would obviously make less money. Would it even remotely risk putting them out of business though? No. Especially when you consider all the merchandise they sell, not just in respect to like like accessories for the consoles they develop, or even for like the games they develop, like controllers and stuff like that, like Pokemon, like the fucking the trading cards, posters, plushies, toys, music, movies. There's TV shows, all this stuff. And it's not obviously not just Pokemon. I'm talking about like every Nintendo franchise in some way. They have their hand in this Scrooge McDuck sized pile of money. It's frankly ridiculous that anyone would think that if Nintendo committed to selling their games at the same retail price, even like, because inflation still has been a problem, going up and up, and we'll get to inflation in a second, they still wouldn't lose money, like a substantial amount of money. They would lose money in the sense that they wouldn't have a big Scrooge McDuck size, like as big a Scrooge McDuck sized giant money bin, but they would still have a giant money bin worth of money. And something that I again was talking about before is what I admired about Nintendo when I was younger, and also in retrospect for many years, was that they were for a time trying to make sure they had sort of an affordable market for those, like maybe you can't afford the big expensive shiny new thing. Well, don't worry, we have this other thing over here, and we're still like, we're making new content for it, but it's like at a lower price point that you like anyone can get into. And now that the market for Nintendo has converged, that place for people has kind of evaporated. They're being pushed out of buying into Nintendo, being a Nintendo fan, being able to be a Nintendo fan. And I'm speaking again as like someone who's deliberated with their friends whether we should buy into Nintendo because of everything going on in the world with finances right now. And again, how people are gonna chalk everything up to what's going on with the tariffs. I do not believe, or inflation even, and I don't believe that is the sole cause. That whole excuse about inflation, like, oh, technically we're not paying as much as we were, however, like 20, 30, 40 years ago for things. Things were way more expensive back comparatively when adjusted for inflation. That does not account for the discrepancy in wages costs. That is the critical thing that people continue to avoid talking about, whether they are aware of it or they just want to disregard it because they don't like how it makes their companies look. But the reality is, as the price of living and of products, food, and even like recreational commodities like something like Nintendo, like this is a hobby a lot of people want to engage with, a passion people want to engage with. As the price of all of those things has gone up, let's see if I can get my other hand for this. By comparison, if you're talking about not literally, but like comparatively, wages have dropped in the sense that they have remained mostly the same while inflation has gone up. And it's created this rising gap where people previously maybe could have afforded a console like this when adjusted for inflation and stuff like that. They can no longer afford a console like this. They can no longer afford games like this. Like there was a time where games were a hobby. You would go out to, again, even you could go out to a garage sale and buy used games for like a fraction of the price that they are worth now. And part of that is again because of that artificial price retention, both on Nintendo's part and also because of rising demand from collectors and consumers with disposable income. But the thing is, less and less people have that disposable income now, and it's at this point, especially this year with the tariffs and everything that's just affecting the cost of everything, where people basically have to choose like between whether they can afford this payment on their insurance or their car or their rent or whatever. People now have to choose between this hobby that they love, and I'm not saying this wasn't a problem before, but it's reached a point where it's like a real decision, more of a decision than it ever was before. And if this is like a problem that's affecting dedicated fans like me, like my friend, and this is something that's you can see affecting people online. Obviously, this is obviously going to also affect the casual market, like people that like buy Nintendo for their kids. Like they don't have necessarily an investment in Nintendo, and they see the price of these games now. Like the Nintendo Switch is like $450. They see the price of the games, which are now $70 each, $80 in some cases. Like I imagine, like what is the see Mario Wonder in the store, and like sure, if they have a Switch One, like they can opt for that. But you know, for how long? This is going to eat into Nintendo's profits, whether they want to confront that or not. They are effectively dividing their own market, where suddenly these people that previously went to Nintendo because they could trust Nintendo to provide them with games that were of a very high quality, but also at a reasonable price. Back in the day, even a more affordable price. What like casual like mom is gonna buy their kid this like $450 system with this $70 Donkey Kong game when they could just get their kid a phone and like let their kid like just waste their time playing mobile games all day? And like obviously, you know, I have opinions, you know, about like the mobile market in general, but there's some competent experiences on there. Obviously indie games have a lot of mobile support as well. Like there are other videos out there, not just mine. Obviously there have been videos out there for months that have tens of thousands of views, potentially millions. I haven't checked back on some of them to see like how the sentiment has grown. But if that's the case with the dedicated fan base, that is 100% going to be the case with the casual market, who are just going to look at this and be like, well, why would I buy my kid this overpriced thing? Either they're going to stick with what the kid already has and be like, that's good enough, or you know, they'll go somewhere else. They'll get the kid like a phone, or if they're like even a little bit savvy, they might get their kid like a those like handhelds where you can basically like you can download PC games to, or stuff like that. Legitimately, that is something I'm considering, is like just getting into the PC market. That's not something I thought I would say. I mean, I used to play PC back in the day, but most of the games I love come from Nintendo, and it's because of that seal of quality. And I was initially, I should also preface this by saying I didn't even get my thoughts on the Switch 2 before we heard about all the prices and stuff, but I was initially really excited. I was excited about all the games. I'm still like have a huge respect for the developers, but once I heard about the prices, it's like, do I really want to support this kind of decision? Because it's $70 today. Is it going to be $80 tomorrow? The answer, by the way, is yes. We already are seeing that some of these games are $80, and it's like, why would I go play Donkey Kong as much as I want to play Donkey Kong and Mario Kart for $70 when Silk Song is out for $20? And I know that's the thing that, you know, people might get triggered because of how often that's used as the example, but Silk Song is $20. It's like a big comprehensive experience. And of course, the whole indie industry is a lot more lenient with the pricing, because it's like once they feel like they've gotten what they need from fans, it's like, okay, well, now we just want to see like there's obviously people we haven't reached yet, whether they have don't have as much money to spend, or they're not sure if they want to buy into it. It's like, here, we'll give you an opportunity to buy into it. And the thing is, these are indie studios. These are indie studios. I want to clarify that. These are small, independent studios, and they can stomach that discount. Why can't Nintendo stomach that discount? It's absurd. And you can try to say, oh, well, Nintendo, you know, they have physical media. They have an eShop too. They literally own the platform. They make all that money from... It's not like even Steam, where Steam takes a cut. Nintendo doesn't lose a cut of anything. They get a cut from every sale on the eShop. In fact, kind of transitioning into the next point, is like they're now even selling game cards that don't even have the games on them. This is a whole nother thing, but they're now selling something that's been referred to as game key cards. And what these are basically game cards that have little to no content on the actual card beyond it being basically like having an internal key that you use to download the game from the eShop and put it onto your system. So even through that, they're basically manufacturing these dummy cards that don't even have the game. I assume they don't even have like a large capacity. If that's the case, if it just holds a key, I assume there's like not a lot of space on there at all. It's absurd to say like Nintendo is like, oh, they're doing so much for us. They're doing so much. It costs Nintendo an arm and a leg to bequeath us. Is that the right word? To give us the honor of playing their game for $70, for $80. It should be our privilege. No, I don't get on board with any of that. Again, especially looking at the indie scene and what indie developers are able to do and have been doing for years. And of course, Nintendo is a larger company. I do want to like give credit there. They are a larger company. They have larger staff. They have, you know, distributor. All that stuff costs money. Do I think that eats significantly enough into their profits where their games have to be $70? No, and I don't think it will ever be the case unless we enter like post-apocalyptic financial scenario, which, I mean, the way the world is going, maybe we will very soon. But do I think they're there now where this is a valid excuse? No. In fact, I would say even if the tariffs weren't a thing, they would still do this. Even if inflation stopped, if it just flatlined, I still think they would increase the prices. I just wanted to get the big elephant in the room out of the way, because a lot of the people are going to say, oh, but the tariffs, oh, but inflation. And the reality is, it's Nintendo. It's Nintendo. There are not a lot of things that could sink that ship, honestly. Like, even after all this I want to make this clear, even after like if the Switch 2 ends up performing really bad, sure, they might lose investors and things. Do I think they're going to be in the gutter and go bankrupt? No. But I do think with this action specifically, they've betrayed a lot of consumer trust and faith. And again, it's not the only thing. I have more I can get into, even though I've been talking quite a while. And not even necessarily trust. It's just like financially, people can't buy into this anymore. And that's not a small thing. That's a huge thing. And if Nintendo was smart, they would see that and they'd be like, oh, we should lower the price. Again, I mentioned this back when the 3DS first launched. There was sort of some doubts whether people would pay the price. I think it launched at $280. Correct me if I'm wrong, $280. And people were like, this is like the price of a home console. You were trying to sell us this, and the games that released at launch were not the most substantial, and they were still like full price. But that's the case with basically I didn't even bring up Switch Welcome Tour. Whatever, I won't get into that right now. But a few months in, it was clear that despite the DS's success and the Wii success, the 3DS wasn't doing as well, presumably because of that increased price. And this was something that was like, there was internal debate whether or not this would be a problem, but Nintendo was like, no, we can do this. We can sell the system at this price. Consumers weren't buying it, or at least weren't buying it at the degree Nintendo was hoping for. And so CEO of Nintendo Japan, Satoru Iwata, came forward and was like, this isn't working, we gotta fix this. And he lowered the price of the original 3DS. And not only that, he took a considerable dock to his salary. And I know like CEOs make like a shit ton of money, and so it's like, is that really anything, you know? But it's like, he at least felt the need to do it. And he took this considerable dock to his salary, so like the staff didn't have to compensate for the amount of money Nintendo was supposedly losing. I don't remember exactly like how much they were losing in lowering the price. And eventually, you know, obviously there was a big comeback. The 3DS made a big comeback. It was one of Nintendo's most successful consoles ever. There was multiple variations. With the 2DS was like super successful, even though it like had some problems. Like that was just something I always admired about Iwata, was that he was willing to do that. Like, he was still a CEO, and it's like, I didn't know him personally to know like how authentic he was as a person, but he, at least whenever I watched those like interviews with him, he did come off as a very authentic person, and I always respected him. Same with Reggie Fils-Aimé. Reggie Fils-Aimé famously like wanted to bundle in I believe it was Wii Sports with the Nintendo Wii. I forget if it was just in America or if it was everywhere, but he wanted to bundle in Wii Sports, and Nintendo of Japan, they were like, no, we want to sell this as like a full title. And Reggie's like, no, you have to pack in a game. with the console. And Nintendo Japan, they were like really against the idea, but Reggie convinced them. And it was like, I think part of the reason the Wii was so successful is like, not only do you get the console, you get a game with the console. And you kind of see that carry over into the 3DS. The 3DS had all these pack-in games and features that were like super fun and compelling to mess around with. None of them were full games, but it just came in free bundled with the system, like Face Raiders, the camera, and the music app, and all these little things. They all came in stock with the 3DS. And I think it actually gave the system a lot of value that it otherwise wouldn't really have. And then we get to the Switch, and as much as I praise the Switch 1, the one thing where I believe this was kind of like a sign of what was to come with the Switch generation, it didn't have any pack-in software. It was just this void of utility. And I think that was part of the appeal, was the fact that it felt so much like a device. But the thing is, even like a phone comes with like different apps you can fool around in, like just right out of the box, even if they aren't always like the most fleshed out or whatever. And again, the 3DS, they just did that. They had like Mii Maker. Even on the Wii U, they had a few things you could mess around with. And the Switch one didn't have any of that. Even like Mii Maker, it was like robbed of like all its personality. There was no music. It just felt like it was completely devoid of like that same sort of magic. I mean, that it still had value, like as like a portable system. It was like there was a lot about it. I don't want to put it down after I praised it so much. I think there was a lot to the Switch that was great, but the lack of pack-in content, I think, is kind of the one thing that the Switch sorely lacked. And now with the Switch 2, again, they're asking $450 and then $70 for the games, and it just feels like consumers like me, consumers like casual consumers, other gamers, they're just like, why? Is this something really worth buying into? Like, maybe we'll wait and watch a few directs. Like, I was very excited for the last direct, hoping this would be it. This is the direct where they show me the thing and I get the system, even if I feel guilty about it. I'll get the system, and it just didn't come. And I'm just at that point where I'm thinking maybe it will never come. I mean, maybe it, release a new Zelda game and I'll be like, okay, well, I have to get it because this game looks really good. But it's like, that could be another 8 years away, and by that time it's like maybe they will drop the price because there's like so many people not willing to buy in. Oh yeah, I want to get back to my point. Sorry, this is a bit of a mess. It's late, but like that was something I always respected about Iwata, and as well about Reggie, and like they were both CEOs. There will always be like contentions a person can have when it comes to like companies and CEOs and stuff like that. But I do think they were overall forthright, forward-thinking leaders of their respective companies. And then of course Satoru Iwata passes away. I forget the name of the person that succeeded him, and then Doug Bowser took over as the new CEO of Nintendo of America. And things haven't been great since then. I think since then Nintendo's greed, it was already a thing, but like since then, and especially with the Switch 2, it feels like Nintendo's only doubled down on playing to what makes them the most money, what will make the shareholders the most happy, like they are pushing to see how much they can get from consumers, and a lot of people just aren't willing to bite anymore, or deliberating on whether or not they should. Oh yeah, and I didn't even get to the Amiibo. Like I mentioned accessories, but the other thing is Amiibo have also substantially gone up in price. I didn't know any of this seeing the last direct. I really should have checked their websites and stuff, because they've done this weird shady thing before. I should really talk about this. Before they were pretty open about talking about the price of their games or their system, like talking about it. I'm pretty sure they mentioned it, yeah, in like when they would take it to E3, or I think the original Switch presentation brought up the price. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but they very deliberately hid the price. Like, they didn't talk about it. You had to like go to the website to find out that the cost of the Switch 2, and also the fact that all the games were $70. That is substantial news, and they didn't mention it in the direct. That is a big thing that I feel like they should have characterized in the direct. They aren't doing that anymore, and with this recent line of amiibos, back in the day, jingle jingle, back in the day, amiibos were, I think they were like $12, $15. And yeah, they weren't of the highest quality, but it was like a piece of Nintendo plastic, and it felt like, you know, they didn't have a lot of functionality, but it was nice to have like a character. Like, there wasn't like a lot of Mega Man merchandise, you know, there wasn't like, you know, Splatoon merchandise, stuff like that, but it was nice to have like a little like Toon Link or like a Guardian or something, or even like Pikmin. Like, Pikmin never got merchandise. That was cool. And like, you could give, like, in the over time the price steadily got up, but also the quality went up, and so it didn't feel like that big of a deal. But with the latest direct, we got the price. Sorry, not even in there. You had to go to the website, and the price of these amiibo. I mean, some of them are like, they're pretty substantial in size. Like, I acknowledge that. Are $30 to $40. I believe. I'm trying to remember if the Kirby amiibo are 20 or 30. Like, I don't remember. $30, $40 for an amiibo. Like, for an amiibo. This was like a cute little statue, like, back in the day. And I mean, yeah, there's like other figures and stuff you can buy, but it's like, it's just kind of absurd that not only like how high the price has gone, and you can argue, okay, tariffs again, you can argue that, but like, I'll give you more of a shot with like that, because it's like all physical. It's like, it's a physical thing. It's a physical object, and they probably make it in like Taiwan or something, and so tariffs obviously have a substantial effect on that, versus a game where it is like a digital medium. That's a different thing. But it's a substantial jump in price, and that's a big ask, and most people are going to look at that and be like, no, I'm not willing to shell out that much. Like, that's, you, again, there are games that are big games, expansive games you can get for less money. Like, even Mario Galaxy, correct me, I'll put the prices on screen, but I'm pretty sure like the Mario Galaxy amiibo is like $30. Might be even more than that. That's like equal to or comparable to the price of the game itself. That's kind of ridiculous. Of course, like, here's the thing. I'll get into whether or not I'll buy a Switch 2 a bit later, but I just want to say, like, the amiibo is like one interesting thing where they are like some really good looking amiibo, and specifically in respect to Samus on the motorcycle, and also the Rosalina one. Like, those are like my two favorite characters of all time, by the way, Rosalina and Samus. I don't know, we'll see. I might buy at least one of them, because you don't see figures for these characters like ever, and I care about these characters so much. Even if I have like a lot of frustration with Nintendo right now, and people are gonna call me a hypocrite, you know, I believe I can complain and express my feelings on Nintendo, and at the same time, it's like, okay, well, this is a product I'm interested in. It's a lot of money though, and I'm still deliberating over whether or not I want it. But it's Samus on a motorcycle. Like, there's other Samus amiibo I haven't bought, but Samus on a motorcycle is not an amiibo that existed before, so I'm interested in that. And also Rosalina with her storybook, like, that specifically is like a really influential component of her story. Like, to me, she was always one of my favorite characters because of that story that Koizumi put into Mario Galaxy, and that's like kind of that moment encapsulated and given a physical form. That's cool. And then also there's the storybook and stuff, and yeah, so like, as you can see, like, I'm a bit divided on, like, you know, this is a bit more than I would charge for this, but also I do think it's like, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I do think it is its own problem, in the sense, like, only people like me who like super want this are probably gonna buy this. The majority of people are gonna look at this, like, just casual gamers and players, and they're gonna say no. I don't want to pay $30-$40 for an amiibo, especially like the Kirby Air Ride amiibo. I don't think anyone's gonna buy that specifically. Like there's already been so many Kirby amiibo, and Air Ride getting an amiibo is cool, but the fact that it's like so much more money because of like the weird cart mechanic where you like plug Kirby in. Very Starlink Battle for Atlas, by the way. Like, it is interesting, but I would say it's not even as interesting as Starlink Battle for Atlas, because at least that's like a whole ship. You at least got a whole ship with that, and it was like still a toy that it was like it gave you content. Like, you buy this ship, you'll get content in the game. That's pretty substantial. In all these amiibo, one of the big problems with amiibo that I would like to talk about sometime, I don't want to get too much into it, but just like, they don't do anything. Yes, you really just buy it for the statue, unless it's like you want to fight your double in Smash Brothers. Other than that, it's like, why? Who cares? Yeah, I think that I've covered basically everything about the price. In that respect, I think that's covers just about everything. My feelings on it. Overall, I think Nintendo has a lot more to lose than they are willing to admit or see right now. Not just in respect to hardcore, like, dedicated fans, but also in respect to the casual crowd. Like, they got people in with the Game Boy, with the casual crowd, with the Wii, with the Switch, and I don't think they're gonna get them for the Switch 2. Like, the Switch 2 has so much working against it in that respect, and it's not like they did this one thing, therefore I hate Nintendo. I'm not saying that. It's the compounding of all these things coming together, pushing people away, I feel. Because I feel it happening to me, and I see it happening to other people. And I see it happening, of course, like, kids especially who are, like, what is your main market, Nintendo? What I've always liked about Nintendo, it felt like they appealed to such a wide demographic of people. And I'm not just talking about, like, genders or age groups. Anyone could, like, get into Nintendo, like, see a game that was for them, see a system that was for them. It's like, who is this system for? It's $450. The games are $70. You have Donkey Kong on the cover, and yes, there are older folk that really love Donkey Kong. There are folk like me who are willing to give Donkey Kong a shot, even if they don't have any strong connection to Donkey Kong. But the price is just like, who are you trying to get with this? Like, I thought, like, for a long time you're like trying to appeal to children, but no child is going to be able to afford this. No parent is going to want to buy this for their kid unless they happen to be of an upper middle class or upper class household. More and more, again, I was talking about, like, inflation going up and income and wages among middle lower class going down, and we're just at that point where most people, I feel like I can say pretty confidently, can't stomach that price tag. I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit more than I should, just because there's so many components kind of all contributing to the same overall thing. I already mentioned Switch 2 editions, but I will say, like, locking content behind Switch 2 edition is kind of gross. Like, I get they're trying to make the value seem worth it, but also it's like you could just, have it be free. Like, have it be a free upgrade. Like, some games do have a free upgrade, but a lot of them don't. They're like a paid upgrade. And then some of them aren't even like a full upgrade. Like the Mario Party Jamboree. Is it Jamboree? The new Mario Party is like, there's a Switch 2 edition. It's like paid DLC. You buy it, you get this new side modes and stuff, new multiplayer things, and that sounds very interesting. And there's like new graphical upgrades, and it's like, oh, okay, you buy the game, and then you come to find all of that new stuff is like in a separate game. And the base game is untouched. Like, I'm not just talking about, like, there's no new content in the base game. The graphics haven't been touched either. Like, it is still 1080p, 3060, whatever the base frame rate is. It's like still, it's literally just the Switch 1 version, which you can already play on the Switch 2 because they are backwards compatible. Well, I will give the Switch 2 credit. It's at least backwards compatible, though that's not a big deal if they were like from the same family. But this Mario Party, you pay for the DLC if you want to like get that the Switch 2 version, but in reality, it's just like a side mode that is kind of tacked on. It's not even part of the original experience, and all the visual upgrades and fancy stuff all of that is exclusive to that side mode. And that, in my opinion, just feels like deceptive advertising, which is also kind of gross. And again, there's a lot of similar sort of grossness when it comes to like Super Mario Wonder. There's like all this new stuff that's coming to like the Switch 2 version, but it also seems like it is also sort of a tacked on mode, and we'll see if it affects anything, like the graphics are affected in the base game or whatever. But even then, it's like the fact that, because I just mentioned before that Rosalina is one of my favorite Mario characters of all time, and I was so disappointed she wasn't in Mario Wonder, only to find out, oh, in the Switch 2 version, she's a new character, I guess, like an unlockable character or something, but she's not coming to the Switch 1 version, and that's frustrating. It's like I bought into this just to find out you're basically, it feels like they're holding back content that was going to be in Mario Wonder, because it didn't release that long ago, and they're just like, no, you want Rosalina, that's like a $10 or $20 paywall. I forget how much it is. It's probably like $10, like a $10 paywall. You want to play as Rosalina, and that's kind of gross. Oh yeah, I just remember Pokemon. And then there's everything going on with Pokemon Z, actually Donkey Kong as well. Okay, so I guess we're transitioning into the topic of DLC. DLC and Nintendo, that's always been kind of a contentious topic. Whether or not DLC is worth it, most of the time it feels like the DLC Nintendo makes isn't that substantial, but they still charge a lot of money. But this is kind of egregious in that with Donkey Kong, they just released the game. It's not even like a month or two old, and they already have announced DLC. In fact, I think is it playable now? I think it's actually playable now, isn't it? They like stealth drop DLC, and it's like Donkey Kong's Island. You pay $2, whatever, to do this new side mode where you collect emeralds and stuff. And you know that seems cool, but also it's like this isn't like a few years after the fact. And again, it's only like one new area. It's not like a whole new campaign. It's like $10 or $20. I forget the price. I'm sorry about that. For a game that just released. So that means, like, presumably, because this isn't like a substantial DLC, but it's also not nothing. So they were working at this while they were already working on the base game, like, or getting the base game ready to launch. So basically they had this ready or almost ready, and they withheld it in order to charge more money for Donkey Kong, which is already a $70 game. Now it's like a $100 game to experience the full thing, and that just feels kind of gross. And it's made even worse because it's not even like a one-off thing. In the same direct, we get Pokemon Legends ZA, which was a game I was actually kind of interested in. I still haven't played a Pokemon all the way through because, like, well, I don't know, one reason or another, I was excited for the Switch 2 version of ZA because it was like, oh, it's probably got a graphical overhaul and stuff before, the price of everything came to light. They announced in the direct that, like, oh yeah, be hyped for Legends ZA, it's coming out soon. Also DLC, we're announcing DLC, and it's like, what? The game isn't even out and you're announcing DLC? What is this? Paid DLC? You're announcing not just like a fun little, like, oh, here's a little extra thing that's coming down the line before the game is even out, which is already weird. There's more content that could be in the game. It's either two things. One, either this content is ready or basically ready, and we're withholding it so we can charge more money. I mean, they're doing that anyway. Charge more money for this game later, cutting down the base experience. Or the game isn't finished and they're like just deciding to, like, okay, now not only are we selling them unfinished games, which was already kind of a problem with Pokemon, is selling kind of shoddily made games that felt like, based on what I have seen from other people's reviews and constructive criticism, unfinished, or games that just weren't as fleshed out as they used to be. Now they're like, we're still doing that, but now we're doing it where the stuff we haven't finished, we are now selling it to you. Like, rather than just selling you something and it's clearly unfinished, we are withholding stuff that we would have put in the game, but to make like release it within a time frame. we are selling it to you. So now this game that was already $70 is now $100-something. That is also ridiculous. The fact that, like, again, this is a game that is supposed to be marketed towards children, and yet they are charging through the nose. I mean, I understand from a business perspective, money. They want the money. But also from like a consumer forward perspective, it doesn't feel like that way at all, first of all. But it feels like it's just sowing bad, what's the word, like bad blood, like consumers aren't trusting you anymore. They aren't trusting you to deliver them the full experience. They aren't trusting you to deliver experience that is feels comparable to the money they're putting in. Again, I should have clarified this when talking about that disparity between inflation and finances earnings earlier. Is we are paying more. This is what I wanted to say, but I forgot to say. We are objectively paying more of what we earn than we were in previous years to play video games, like as like a recreational hobby, as like a means of, like, basically a means to distract us from all the terrible things going on in the world. Games were a retreat, and it was like, still, even though it was some money, it was still like a hobby most people could get into. Now we are paying so much more for what? At this point, it feels like it's not even a good value anymore. And again, more people like me are just being like, do I even need Nintendo? Should I just go to indies, just go full in on indies? Should I get a Steam Deck? Should I get a mini PC to have connected to the TV and play? Because there's a lot of games, obviously, I haven't played years because they're on other consoles or they're on PC and I never got around to them. I still haven't played Half-Life. I still haven't played BioShock. And it's like, I'm looking at Nintendo, I'm like, what are you offering me? This half-made Pokemon game for $70. If I want the full thing, it's over $100. Why would I do that when I could just go and play this other game, Silksong, for $20? I could play 3D platformers that look really good, might even be out. There's like a platformer game where you use a fishing hook and you like, it looks really fun, where you swing around like Spider-Man. That looks really fun. And it's like, do I want to buy that for like $60? Sorry, $20? Or do I want to play Donkey Kong and pay like $100-something for the full experience? It's like even Bug Fables. Like Bug Fables was like Paper Mario. Paper Mario is a series that's near and dear and close to my heart. And I've been nothing but disappointed by the current direction. Not necessarily just because I feel like, oh, Nintendo owes this to me to deliver exactly what I want out of Paper Mario. It feels like Nintendo themselves don't really understand like why they're still making Paper Mario. It's incredibly frustrating as someone who cherished those games with such a reverence, only for Bug Fables to come along. And it's like this indie game. It's all about bugs. You play cute little bug guys and you go around and you basically do a Paper Mario, but it's its own original thing in a bug world. And it's bringing back all the mechanics you want, except they're somehow even deeper. Like, I mean, maybe you could argue like some people might still prefer the Thousand Year Door or even the original. I still love the original, but Bug Fables to me was just kind of like, wow. That was the first sort of wow. I don't know if I need Nintendo to like deliver those experiences that I thought I could get nowhere else. Because that now it feels like more and more are carrying that torch that Nintendo not necessarily even passed on. They left behind, and someone came along and they found it, and now they're marching forward with that torch, and it's an inspirational thing. I think just more and more people are just looking and asking like, do I need Nintendo to feel the way I felt about gaming? For a time, I thought that was the case, but more and more, I'm like, there are more compelling experiences out there than you can currently get, not necessarily just from Nintendo, just from the industry at large, for a price that is like affordable or reasonable, and from small studios nonetheless that probably were struggling to get by as is. They didn't have the security that Nintendo had, and it's incredible what they've been able to do. Oh yeah, and of course, there's everything to do with like what Nintendo's response has been to all this, and they've been mostly pretty quiet about it. with a few exceptions here and there. One of the most notable being from Doug Bowser himself. And Doug Bowser, like, as far as I know, there isn't anything specifically he has done, aside from the fact that, like, if you were hiring a CEO to take over your company from, like, what was it? Like, Reggie was the freaking CEO of, was it Abby's Pizza? Or was it, not Papa John? Was it with the other one? Pizza Hut. He was a Pizza Hut CEO, wasn't he? And then he came in and wasn't really familiar with video games, but he came in and he kind of helped get the company to a pretty good place. I mean, I know Japan handles most of the stuff, but like, there was a lot of good that came out of that era, I could think, because of Reggie. And, you know, who did they hire next? A CEO from EA. You know EA? Electronic Arts, one of the most notoriously awful video game distributors in the entire industry. Like, probably up there with Activision and Blizzard. In fact, I would say like EA is even more notorious because so many of their games release like completely busted and broken. Not even just on Nintendo. They will just release and there's all these problems with it. They're full of microtransactions. Some of them have, like, I don't want to say that something is wrong, but I'm pretty sure some of them even have like ads, like full-on ads in the game. Like, the game stops, like, during a loading screen or whatever, to show you an ad for a product. It's like, how dystopian is that? And of course, there's also the business practices that are really bad. And it's like, who could Nintendo hire as a successor to Reggie Fils-Aimé? A freaking EA executive. Sorry, did I say EA CEO? I don't think he was a CEO. He was just the kind of like a high-ranking executive. So that's not good. First of all, that's a bad sign. And then he's done a few things. I don't remember all of them. I didn't like spend a lot of time getting this video scripted or anything, obviously. But one of the things that was really frustrating that Bowser did was, like, when all this kerfuffle came about because of the Switch 2's pricing and the game's pricing, you would think like maybe Bowser would say, oh, this is something we're having discussions about, and that's still kind of a very corporate response, but it's at least like maybe they care. But his response was something way worse, actually. His response was, and I don't want to like misquote, this is like, I am paraphrasing because it was kind of corporate speech a lot and I didn't want to read the full quote, but basically said, in respect to consumers being priced out of Switch 2, if you can't afford to play Switch 2, just buy a Switch 1. Play Switch 1 games. That was basically what he said. Like, I'm paraphrasing. There's like an actual quote and it's kind of a bit more flowery, but basically the effect of what he's saying is, oh, you can't afford our new product that is like stupid expensive? We have a product for you and it's the old one. Just, if you can't afford this one, I don't know, go buy the old one. If you already have the old one, just be happy we aren't raising the price of it. Psych, we did raise the price of it. And yeah, like, obviously that's because of tariffs, but it's like, it's the fact that they did that at all is like awful. It's like, you know, obviously, well, what would I do in that situation? I'm not entirely sure. The fact that the technology is already really old, like, it honestly should have gone down in price a while ago. So I don't necessarily think the uptick in prices. I think it is meant to try and offset what they might be losing for the Switch 2, but it still feels gross. It feels like they're diminishing the gap between the price of Switch 1 and 2. Stop popping up. I'm gonna cancel my subscription, Bitdefender. To make it, shut the fuck up. To make the jump in price seem like it's not all that bad, but the problem is it is all that bad, and the raising the price of the Switch 1 is also really bad, because again, there was people I know that were waiting for the price to eventually go down because it was like already 2013 technology, like the Tegra chip. It was not new technology, it was already old. Midway through the Switch's life, it already felt like ancient tech. And now with the Switch 2 out, they're still manufacturing the Switch with it, which is a good thing, I think. Prior to like the Switch 2's announcement, they did not lower the price. of the Switch 1. Maybe they would have. I honestly don't think they would with this price retention strategy they've had for the past few years. I think if they could keep selling the Switch 1 for as much as they have been, they would. Honestly, they seem more concerned about the money at this point versus 10, 20 years ago. Even with the launch of the Switch 1, I would argue that it felt like they were more generous with the pricing on a lot of things. Why would you settle for 2013 technology that's like almost the price of a PS4? I don't understand. I don't understand it. Okay, I feel like that's a lot of the main things. There are some miscellaneous things I did want to talk about. Nintendo's pretty notorious with DMCA's, lawsuits and all sorts of things like that. Some of them, like, you could argue when it was like affecting their their IP in some way, or someone was infringing on their distribution rights, things like that. Like, it is more understandable, but it's still like so much. It feels like an overstep on their part, coming down on fans, especially in respect to like fan projects, in respect to Zelda, respect to Mario, like different fan games, Metroid. Oh yeah, Metroid. Another Metroid 2 remake. I believe that's what it was. That was really frustrating. That they ended up like going after that. Something notable that they ended up doing was they ended up coming after. I forgot to write down his name. But they ended up coming after creator of the character of Waluigi. I don't know if you heard about this. So I feel bad I don't remember his name or even like the company he worked for. But back in the day, for Mario Tennis, they were creating what do you call it, like doubles characters for like the supplementary characters like Wario, and they needed a character to kind of fill that role, and they ended up creating Waluigi. Like, Waluigi didn't exist before Mario Tennis, and this creator, I believe there was another character that also kind of had a similar origin. I mean, Daisy did get kind of a revamp around that time as Peach's double, but they were also considering this team that was making this game on behalf of Nintendo. The fact that like they basically pitched like a Nintendo character and they got approved for it was kind of crazy, and they immediately kind of off that high wanted to create another character, and that was Water Peach. Water Peach was going to be sort of an evil counterpart to Peach, and you know, whether or not it would have like worked or been like a comparatively iconic character or not, you know, that's like a whole debate within itself. But it was something that the team was kind of passionate about, and when they brought it to Nintendo, specifically Miyamoto, he was like, "Get that shit out of my face." He was very not into it. Very because it was clear that Waluigi was kind of inspired from this one anime that kind of had a character that resembled Wario. So you had Wario, Waluigi, both resembling these villains in this one anime, and then the idea was to kind of have a Peach counterpart to the villainess. And Miyamoto was like, "This is too far. It's not very creative. I don't like it either." Like, he just didn't like the design. And you know, we didn't really know much about this character other than like from interviews or something like that, until a few years ago when pressed about it, like just kind of like a lot of hubbub about the character. The developer who created Waluigi came forward with concept art, and this was like a big thing. This was like a canceled Mario character. It's like a huge thing. Like, Waluigi is as much a Mario character as basically any other Mario character. It sucks that he isn't in like a main game, but he's like a mainline, not mainline, I guess. What do you say? He's like in Mario Kart. He's in all the sports games. There's a lot of love within Nintendo and from the fan base that just love Waluigi. Like, the freaking rose is like a popular meme drawing Waluigi with the rose, like in the sexy pose, because it's like he's just kind of this very weird, bizarre character, but everyone just kind of latches onto him because it's like he's contrasts so much personality-wise from the rest of the cast. It almost feels like a Team Rocket sort of character within the world of Mario, like how absurd he is. And yeah, so the creator of Waluigi releases this this concept art of Walu Peach. And it's not like something Nintendo's currently working with. They haven't probably thought of this character for years at this point. And what does Nintendo do? They send a DMCA to tell him to take that shit down, and he did. Not before everyone like had images. It was all over online. It's all anyone talked about for weeks. But not only did they tell him to take down that like image of, like, this was a character he created, and he clearly had some love for this character, and she was a really cute design as well, which is sad that we never really saw her in any official game or anything like that. He's also known for drawing Waluigi. Like, he's the creator of Waluigi, and he clearly has a love for this character he had to bring to life, and the community clearly loves him. And from what I understand, Nintendo kind of, with this DMCA, they kind of threatened or intimidated him into taking down not just the picture of Walu Peach, but also his fan art of Waluigi. Think about that. Like, the creator of this character was basically threatened and intimidated to take down fan art of a character they created, that Nintendo profits off of every day with merchandise and like in games and stuff. My favorite piece that he did like a Akira power slide like on the bike with Waluigi. It's so good, and he ended up having to take that down, and it's just really sad, and that's bad. Obviously, another DMCA thing that was kind of gross, and this is just recent years. They've been doing shit like this for ever, obviously. They ended up they ended up suing a kid. I forget when that was. They ended up suing a little kid like years ago. I forget when that was, or the exact story behind it even. But like recently, they ended up doing like filing a DMCA on like archive.org because someone had posted like a manual for Mario 64, a Japanese manual. And keep in mind, Nintendo hasn't released this shit in over 20 years. It's this manual, and it's full of these wonderful dioramas. This is something like that was officially released by Nintendo. And again, just like talk about media preservation, Nintendo hasn't done shit with manuals, and I would like to do a video on manuals, especially because I think they're an overlooked, what would you say, tragedy, like a loss to gaming culture and history, because so many games require you to have the manual to even know what's going on, or even how to play the game. Like, you can try to play Zelda 1 without the manual. If you don't know how, it's impossible. Like, you are expected to read that manual. The manual had like a physical map you would read. That was like an integral part of the manual. And someone had posted a Japanese manual for Mario 64 to archive.org, and it had these beautiful like clay dioramas of all the levels. It was like, I've never seen anything like that, where there's like all these like accurate to scale dioramas of every level in the game, like 3D. This was before, like, I mean, not before 3D. If they wanted to just like have the models in the manual, they could have, but they didn't. They took the time to make this cute little diorama for every level. And this was something I hadn't seen before, something other people had seen before. I'm mumbling, I have hair in my face. And it was uploaded to archive.org, because it's like, of course, like, no one, this isn't something Nintendo is actively supporting or putting out. Like, they don't have a website for all this shit. And it got into a few news headlines about, oh, look how cute this is. Look how cute this is. And you know what Nintendo does? They file a DMCA on archive.org and have it taken down. It's like, what? Tell me, Nintendo, what was having this manual, this like 20-something-year-old manual you haven't touched in 20 years? You're not making any money from it. You're not even selling this game in this state anymore. You don't even provide a service. This was something I think Nintendo Online should have, is all the there should be manuals for all the games, should be provided with the games. I think that is something Nintendo should be doing, and it's weird they haven't done it. I haven't heard anyone suggest that before. I don't know if I'm the first one to like talk about that, but like they even had manuals on the Wii U. Like that's a forgotten piece of media. It's like if you go to the Wii U, you launch a game, you pause, you click the manual button. It's not the system manual. That opens up an entire manual for the game. And there's a lot of unseen content you might not have seen before in there. I think some of them might even have custom music for the manual. I don't want to say something that's incorrect, but it's it was something I always appreciated, even though the Wii U was kind of ass in a lot of ways. Like it ran, specifically when I say that, I'm mostly talking about like the UX experience was really bad. Pausing the game, opening a different app, even like going into the system settings is its own loading screen. It was bad, but like that was something I always appreciated about the Wii U. And of course the Switch doesn't do that, unfortunately, and Nintendo isn't supporting manuals on the NSO service either. Like you don't get a manual with Ocarina of Time on NSO. So they're like not making any money from this. Is that to say they will never do this? No, but they haven't. And so what does this look like to us fans? And again, this was years ago. They still haven't done this. What does it look like to us fans who are like taking a moment to appreciate like this little bit of gaming history, and then Nintendo, Big Brother Nintendo comes along and is like, hey, you don't get to look at this, and they take it down. It's just so petty and gross, and I don't think there's an excuse that can even be made. Like even about protecting their IP, it's like there's other stuff on archive.org that's like, you know, has related to Nintendo or related to other gaming companies. I say manual, I think I meant game guide specifically, like just to correct myself, but I consider those, you know, very closely enough to being the same thing, even if one's like more robust, obviously. But it's like I'm sure they have like game guides for like Shadow of the Colossus out there on archive.org, or like The Last of Us or whatever, like these big games. And you know, it's not hurting anybody that those are out there. Are the game companies maybe losing some money, like a fraction of a percent? Yes, but most people, if they're very interested in like owning these manuals, they're going to go out and buy them, assuming you are producing them or providing a service for people to read these things. But of course, is Nintendo doing that? Nope. And it's just a scummy thing. In a long list of scummy things, I honestly probably could have spent more time looking into more like things they've done. That's just like a list off the top of my head. It's like, you know, canceling fan games, obviously, coming after. There's of course like Smash Melee. That was a big thing. There was like a Smash tournament during Corona, and it's like people couldn't come together to see each other, and it was such a big sad thing. Was this before Smash Ultimate came out? I don't remember. Or was it after? I want to say Smash Ultimate was already out. But the service for Smash Ultimate was ass. Really bad latency. And so a bunch of people in the community come together, and Melee, of course, is the biggest in the space. And so what do they do? They make like some kind of mod that can run not only with like emulated versions of Melee, but even like console versions where it basically backports internet support for Melee. And so now people can come together during this time, like where the world, everyone is like locked away from each other during pandemic, and they could come together and still do a tournament. And what does Nintendo do? They catch whiff of this and they're like, no, DMCA, shut this down because we don't want you doing this. And I think there was like a fundraiser going on or something, but they like gave that as the excuse. It still felt gross. And then there was like a Splatoon tournament officially like endorsed by Nintendo, or I forget if it was hosted or endorsed by Nintendo. And some of the players on one of the teams, they had like a hashtag or whatever. I believe it was like free Melee. That was the hashtag that was going around. And so Nintendo shuts down the tournament. They shut down just because they don't like the fact that people are like expressing their frustration with Nintendo not just letting people play their game. And again, this is like a 20-year-old game, and there was no support for Melee, by the way. There was no official way to play Melee during this time, or even play it, like, especially not play it online. There was no way for them to do it. Now there's Switch 2, and I forget if Melee is now on Switch 2 and if it has online functionality whatsoever. But at the time anyway, this was just like, it just felt like a big slap in the face. It was a really upsetting thing, and it was just another like big overreach. But don't worry, there is still more. Because now we get into the patents and stuff. And here's the thing, Nintendo's always patented stuff. In fact, gaming companies in general have always made patents. Patents have historically been used either to consolidate power and influence over like a technological or mechanical idea, or protect an intellectual property. Like the people make arguments, and I think, you know, there should be some intellectual property protections. I do believe that. But over the years, Nintendo has kind of encroached more and more into a sort of disturbing trend, and a lot of this kind of came to the surface with Pal World. And, you know, obviously that's kind of a whole can of worms. There is evidence to suggest Pal World kind of infringed on Nintendo's IP, not in the sense that it's like a Pokemon-like game. I don't think that's a valid excuse. Specifically, there's like concerns that they used some of Nintendo's models as like a base and then built Pokemon off of those like as a template. And I think that is like a gross infringement that should probably be the subject of a lawsuit. Everything else they've done is a gross overstep. And of course, this doesn't even, I'm not just talking about what's going on with Power World. They're doing this with a lot of stuff. But just to talk about Power World, let me look at what I wrote down on my phone here. I don't know if I wrote any specific things down, but going off of memory, so one of the things is they're basically trying to patent the idea of like throwing an object and having it interact with another character. I'll like put on patents on screen if I can. By the way, I should probably preface this by saying, like, if you don't know what a patent is, it's basically like, this idea is mine, not just like a character. It's a bit different than the character. It's like basically the mechanical idea. If you're like, say, making an invention or a way of making medicine, or even like a strain or like corn or whatever, you can patent that shit. Is that kind of gross? Yes, a lot of the stuff that you can do with patents is kind of gross and feels like an overstep to incentivize a sort of monopoly or control. And I think there should be some sort of crackdown on that to remove that power. At least as long as it's not blatantly theft. If it's clearly trying to 100% appropriate the work of someone else. If it's like fucking corn, everything with corn, I understand why it's done, because it's like, oh, a company spends all this time R&D making super corn, and they don't want you to just steal their super corn seeds and plant them, and then it's like, oh, you're stealing our super corn. We spent all this R&D, and then you just come along and steal our super corn. That's not nice. I understand that to an extent, but I also think, again, there should be measures to make sure, like, oh, it's clear that you were intending to infringe. Our corn didn't accidentally end up in your field. But the thing is, these companies are so much bigger than the people they often go after. The people they go after have no choice but to like pay a settlement, or at worst lose the case if they don't have like continue going on and on. Be stuck in lawsuit hell forever. There's like so much about the justice system that's completely fucked. But you know, back to Nintendo, how this relates to Nintendo. They basically patent the idea of like throwing an object, not a Pokeball, throwing a thing that interacts with a character. I believe character is the word. They have a character throwing an object at a character, and then that object, there being sort of a visual indicator that that character is caught, and they're like, this is an idea that we are patenting. And if you were to argue like this is just them trying to protect Pokemon specifically, like if there's another Pokemon like game that comes along, they're not going to go after them. They're only going to go after something like Power World that maybe is trying to infringe on Pokemon very deliberately. And I don't think that's a good argument. Even if that is what they are trying to do, they still have the potential and capacity to go beyond that and that is something people are not acknowledging enough of. And it goes beyond, of course, that one patent. Going into more things associated with the Power World lawsuit is it seems like they're trying to patent the idea of like battles in general, where you like have a character, like a primary character, and then summoning a secondary character to then fight an adversary character. And that's concerning because that doesn't just apply to Pokemon, that applies to like anything. That applies to like freaking Final Fantasy, like having a summon, or Kingdom Hearts, even though Kingdom Hearts isn't turn-based, but it's like Final Fantasy having summoning a character and then having them appear and then do damage and fight another character. Something else they were patenting are mounts, like you basically summoning a mount and jumping on the mount and riding the mount around, and like having that smooth transition from like summoning the mount to riding it around. That is something they patented apparently. And there's so much more in respect to Pokemon Pacific, and I wish I could remember all of it off the top of my head. I could have prepared more. I didn't have the energy to, because I knew this was going to be a long video. And this is them doing all this, by the way, like as the lawsuit is going on, and I'm confused legally as what this means, because from what I would think and understand is like you can't file a lawsuit and then file a patent as the lawsuit is happening and say you're infringing on this patent I just filed in the middle of the lawsuit. That to me seems like that wouldn't hold in court, but it does set a precedent where if they wanted to do it with future lawsuits, they could, because now they do have that patent. And obviously there's the question of like how much would this hold up in court. Probably like maybe these patents are really just to, again, try and protect the IP, but that doesn't mean they can't try and like overreach. That's not to say that's something that can't happen. That is something that very well can happen, and Nintendo has done stuff like that in the past. They've like abused their power, resources in the past to come down on people where it feels like there was no need for them to do something like that. There was something else I wanted to say, I can't remember, maybe I'll remember later, but another instance that was a lot of disturbing things that came about when with the release of Tears of the Kingdom that was frustrating was they actually released a lot of with Tears of the Kingdom, among those being like I believe the Ascend ability, like the ability where you zip through the floor or the ceiling and pop up on the top. There's like some specifics, like you can't go in at an angle, it has to be like a flat surface, but they patented a game mechanic. Like I should have said this before, but all that stuff, they're not just patenting like the IP, because that's something different entirely. That is that's intellectual property. That is I don't think that you can patent that. That is like copyright. They're specifically patenting mechanics, like the mechanics of like within a game world and interfacing with that world, and saying like we own the idea of a character going through the ceiling up to the top, or going through the floor, however you want to say it. We own that idea, and if someone we think has infringed on our mechanic, we will sue that person. They also patented so when you're skydiving, you can actually aim your bow while skydiving. It's like never used. I mean, the one time it's kind of used is in the Caldera fight, I guess. But you can actually like aim your bow while skydiving. That's not something you could do in Breath of the Wild. And there's a bit of movement depending on like how you are falling. Like you can doing a dive and then going and do like drawing your bow, or just kind of falling and then drawing your bow. Like those are two different things. Specifically skydiving, drawing your bow, that is something they patented, like how you move around while drawing the bow. That's patented apparently. And they also patented, this is the thing that kind of got me the most triggered right here, is they patented the loading screen. They patented the loading screen. So when you teleport in Tears of the Kingdom, there's a loading screen that pops up, and it shows a map. It shows a map of where you are and where you're going. Like it's sort of like it shows the map, and then there's like sort of this gradual transition to showcase where you're starting from and where you're going to. And I thought like, oh, that's a really cool mechanic. And I'm trying to remember if that was something like I thought of before, but it was something I considered like adding into like a game I would like to make in the future, where it's like, oh, you can like, it's kind of like shows the path maybe. Like they don't do that where they draw a line, but they like still show where you start from and where you go. And I don't think that they're the first company to do this necessarily, but they took that, just the loading screen, and they're like, we own that. That to me is gross. That it feels very gross. The idea of like patenting a mechanic, it feels so antithetical to the creativity, to art as a medium. Imagine if someone told you like you're painting a painting and they said, you're not allowed to paint pictures of people. You're not allowed to paint pictures using these colors, which like some people, by the way, have like patented or trademarked palettes, like color palettes. That's gross. That should not be allowed. But yeah, to my point, like patenting, like imagine saying like, oh, you can't use these kind of brushes. If you use these kind of brushes, that's infringing on our patents. You can't film a movie and use this 3-act structure. We're patenting like the very concept of the hero's journey or something like that. Now obviously like I'm exaggerating a bit because some of these concepts have been around for a very long time. Games obviously haven't been around for a very long time, but games themselves, like interactive mediums, have been around for a very long time. Games are basically this amalgamation of film, of animation, of art. Almost like there's a tactical feeling to a game and interfacing with it. Mechanics, I would say, are at the very heart of what a game is. And you're coming out here and saying, we own the idea of designing a game and having it work this way, doing something with this idea, you're not allowed. Like, if someone say wanted to make a game like where you walk around on planetoids, or where gravity is different, and Nintendo's like, I don't know if they do have a patent for this or not, but it's like, imagine if they're like, we patented the sort of Mario Galaxy sphere running, wall running thing where you can walk on planets and stuff. Like, you're not allowed to do that. Or if they come out and say, we patent the idea of a 3D platformer because we were like the first to do it in the way that everyone else is doing it, so we're like asserting ourselves and saying, we own this idea of like having the camera be moved by a stick. In fact, they actually did patent the D-pad, if you didn't know. So if you've ever wondered like why the PS4 controller, actually basically every PlayStation controller up until, I don't know if the PS5 controller has a D-pad, but basically every other PlayStation controller, every other controller out there, they don't feature a D-pad because Nintendo patented it. The irony is that I've wanted Nintendo to bring back for a long time are these the triggers on the GameCube. They're like variable triggers, pressure sensitivity. It was, to me, I always thought that was like the biggest, coolest thing about the games, with Luigi's Mansion and with Mario Sunshine, was that variable pressure. And none of the modern Nintendo controllers have that. And the reason is that, I don't know if the technology, like the concept of it itself is, but at least I think the mechanism was patented, and they ended up suing Nintendo, and Nintendo had to pay a settlement years after the fact. And since then they haven't really brought that feature back into the controllers, even though like PlayStation still has like a variable pressure sensitivity in their controllers. So here it is, we even see like Nintendo themselves are the victim of this abuse of like taking an idea, a mechanical idea, and having it like, it's not even applicable. Like, I believe it was like a healthcare company. Like, I might be wrong about that, but it's like, if this was like a healthcare company, why are you coming after Nintendo for like maybe, yeah, they should have paid you if they did get this idea from you, but they also could have like stumbled across this technology themselves. It's like, why are they not allowed to utilize this technology? feels gross, and it's even grosser because Nintendo has had this experience, presumably multiple times, just being a video game company. And then they themselves are patenting this stuff and then coming after companies like Power World. And again, Power World is a very interesting example because it feels so overtly Pokemon, if not for, you know, like they're potentially using Nintendo's assets without the permission. At the very least, Pokemon inspired, but it does raise the question, like, will Nintendo going forward come after stuff that just too closely resembles what Pokemon looks like? Will they come after companies that make a game that is too close to what Mario plays like? Stuff like that, you know? And it is very concerning. And people might say, like, oh, they're patenting this stuff because it's like they don't want to deal with like what happened in the past where people came after them. Maybe they're just patenting it to secure it, and then they're not going to do anything with it. But again, with the whole Power World thing going on, like, it feels very deliberate. It feels very patent trolly, the way everything is kind of unfolding. And I think it's a valid concern to have. I don't think it's something that should be downplayed. It should be something we aren't afraid to say, hey, this is weird. To my knowledge, Nintendo hasn't had any sort of statement on it yet, though. But I think whether or not they choose to abuse this power, it doesn't make it any less gross, you know? And it doesn't exactly reassure me that Nintendo has in the past abused their powers. So I don't think it's a stretch or it's unwarranted to, you know, feel that way. And I think it's something more of us should be talking about, especially as like indie developers or even people that just have an appreciation for games as a medium, that are worried about like these restrictions and limits on creativity. Because if Nintendo can do this and find the grounds to sue something, that becomes precedent, and that can be used in future cases, not just by Nintendo. That can be used in cases for other companies that are openly malicious. And you know, whether Nintendo's openly malicious, that's its own can of worms. But it's like, it does feel gross. It does feel like Nintendo is becoming progressively more and more of a monopoly in respect to these things. Yeah, okay, so I'm looking through. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. I did want to talk about earlier Nintendo originally being a toy company, and how like when I was talking them up in the first half of the video, I wanted to talk about like, oh yeah, Nintendo was a toy, like it was a toy company, and lateral thinking, and how they kind of progressed from first, actually no, they were a playing card company, and they progressed from toys, from cards to toys to video games, like that sort of ascension into like exploration and all that stuff. That's all very interesting. I don't think there's anything I could say right now and still have it be like applicable or relevant. I think I've said everything, but that is something I would like to talk about more one day. Yeah, okay, so this is one of the grosser things, and gosh, I've been talking a while, is Charles Martinet. So for those of you who don't know, Charles Martinet is the voice, or was the voice of Mario. And to my knowledge, there isn't really anything about Martinet that is like controversial or something to scrutinize. Like, he's just been overall like just such a very upstanding, aspirational person, like from the beginning, since he basically took the role of Mario, like right from the beginning. I believe he was brought in to do like Nintendo, when like looking for casting, they were like, they wanted someone to play the role of this like Italian plumber, and Martinet didn't really know anything about Mario. He tried a few voices. The first was like more like Wario, very grovelly and grunty, and the people didn't seem to like it, and it just didn't feel right for the character. And so he ended up pleading like, oh, I'll do one more. And the voice he ended up doing was like the very like Yahoo, like very cheery, happy-go-lucky character that we know today. And they ended up loving it, and like over the years he became the face of Mario, not just in the voice, but also like how he conducted the character, how he characterized the character. Like, he specifically like when interviewed, when talking with like other people at Nintendo, he kind of adopted Mario like as his own, like held to such reverence, like the role it played in bringing joy to the hearts of people. And that was something he took very seriously. And I don't want to worry you guys thinking that he's dead or anything. He's still alive. I think if any of you know who the voice of Mario is, you might know where I'm going with this. I forget when it was it now 2 years ago now? Around the release of Super Mario Wonder, Nintendo announced, also like just after the Mario movie, where first of all, Charles Martinet, there was hope he would be cast as the role as Mario. That didn't happen. It ended up being Chris Pratt, and there's a lot of feelings about that. But he does make a cameo in the movie, so it didn't feel like too icky. It was still a bit icky. It felt like a very corporate movie. But come around to like the reveal of Mario Wonder, and people are speculating: is this new voice of Mario in this game? It's revealed very abruptly by Nintendo, like on Twitter, that like Charles Martinet will not be reprising the voice of Mario in upcoming titles, and they plan to make an announcement in the future about that. And the role Charles Martinet will serve as this new role that is just out of nowhere revealed, called role as the Mario Ambassador. And it just felt so weird. Like it felt like it was like a reaction to trying to dispel like people talking about like concerns like Mario Wonder, a new voice actor. Because like here's the thing, there's been a lot of voice actors throughout the Mario series. Martinet was the exception, where he had such a voice and presence in the company, around the brand, and never was he really replaced that I know of, like with someone else filling a role of one of the characters he played. Not just Mario, he played Mario, Luigi, Mario, Waluigi, the babies, like a lot of characters. It just felt very out of nowhere, and people were like, does Martinet know that this is happening? And of course we eventually get a video. Nintendo like does a bunch of fluff and it's like, oh, we're so happy, like all this legacy Martinet brought to Mario, and we decided together or whatever that he's retiring from the role of Mario for whatever reason. They just worded it very weird, where it doesn't sound like it was Martinet's choice, and it's just kind of like a corporate decision, but they still bring Martinet onto this video to like it feels like, I don't know, it just feels very corporate, like he was put there and he had to say something to try and just save Nintendo's public image. And I want to get more into this later, but it felt very gross also that we don't even see the new voice actor for Mario, like they aren't like revealed in the video. There isn't a symbolic passing of the torch or anything like that. It's just like Martinet is moving on to different things. And then when asked a bit after this event happened, like if Martinet would continue playing the role as Mario, like if he would want to continue playing the role as Mario, he's like, oh yeah, I would never want to give this up. He also revealed, like when asked like what the ambassador program is, like he's at a Comic-Con or something, and he says something to the effect of, like when that post happened on Twitter, he didn't know what that meant. And he still, at the time of this interview, didn't understand what that meant. And it just gives this impression that Nintendo, without really talking about it with him, or at least giving a good enough of a reason, decided to let him go. Maybe even like they just hired some guy, whether they were worried about Martinet eventually like getting too old for the role or whatever, without notifying him, and decided to try and save face and be like, oh, he's gonna have this big role at the company still. But it felt like they were undermining all of this history, all of this trust in this relationship, literally the voice, the face of their company. They don't even, like, from what I understand, this other voice actor doesn't even like have a close relationship with Martinet. There wasn't any sort of apprenticeship. Martinet trying to establish the importance, the role, the spirit of Mario, and how like important that is to him. Because there's interviews where he like goes deep into like all these qualities he feels Mario represents, as like hope, as freedom, as joy. I think joy is the word he likes to use a lot. And it's like, if I was Martinet, I would probably want to like be one-on-one with like whoever is like the future voice actor for this character. And is it like, that also raises the question, is this like forever? Is this new actor playing Mario for just as long as Martinet has, or is it gonna cycle through new voice actors over time? And just the whole thing, the whole way they treated Martinet, just this lovable little ball of like joy, for lack of a better word. It's like this is how Nintendo is treating the voice of their entire brand. This is how they're treating the face of all these childhoods. So how are they, if this is how they treat Charles Martinet, how are they willing to treat us as consumers, as both casual players and like dead people have been following them for years? If this is how they're willing to treat Martinet, it honestly makes me sick to my stomach. And like, I could probably go more to it. I could do more research. I'm sure there's videos out there that go more into it, but it's just, the entire situation felt like this was Nintendo going behind his back without his input. Not that, like, you know, if it's Nintendo owns Mario, if they want to hire someone else, they are free to do that. But it doesn't feel like they considered it with reverence in replacing him so haphazardly without even his consideration, because he hasn't confirmed whether or not they did this without him knowing. But I think I almost feel like he was put under NDA or something, where it's like he walks around the words like very cautiously, and it just feels like I don't know, it just feels like he was very hurt by the whole thing. The first with the Mario movie, the fact that he wasn't cast in the movie was already like, that was already a big thing. And then letting him go like that, just being like, okay, we're hiring this younger person now, and like, I guess you can still appear at Comic-Con, but you're no longer playing the role of Mario. Like, it's, I don't know, I feel like I've said all I could say about that, but I guess to wrap up, it's just sort of like get my feelings out. Like, I want to emphasize, it's not any one thing, all these feelings in respect to Nintendo. It is a compounding of years and years of what feels like apathy or neglect from a company that we've given so much of our trust and reverence. And now more than ever, it feels like they care less about us. They're a corporation, and every corporation is prone to this exact sort of thing. And you could easily argue, like, how is Nintendo any different than any other corporation? Like, it's such like a high and mighty position to try and paint them like as awful as you could, when there are other companies out there even worse. And I think that is an understandable point of view. You're also free to critique those other companies too, and you're also at your liberty to decide whether or not you want to support them or bring your business elsewhere. And that leads to that question again of like, should I boycott Nintendo? And I'm not just referring to me here, I'm referring to you, not like as like me pushing like what I think onto you, but just as like a constructive discussion. It is something I think a lot of us should have right now. And right now, where I am with everything Nintendo's done in respect to the pricing of the games on Switch 2, the expensive peripherals, the price retention of like older games, how they're treating legacy people at the company like Martinet, this change in management to people that are like come from a sort of a dubious place in the industry. It's just like this compounding of things over and over. And again, this isn't even everything. This is just like what I could think of off the top of my head. I could, there's obviously other stuff we could get into. And at least for now, it's like I'm not interested in supporting Nintendo. Really the only thing where it's like, where there's something I am at least considering buying into is like, I've been waiting for Metroid Prime 4. I'm very interested in like what the next Zelda is going to be, if they do a next Zelda. Those two amiibo, like I said, just as like something on my desk. Again, like Mario Galaxy is like a really important game to me. And while maybe I'll buy Metroid Prime 4 for Switch 1, maybe I'll one of these amiibo. In respect to Switch 2, I don't feel particularly incentivized to support them as a company. And you could call me a hypocrite in that, like, you know, if you're gonna say you don't support them as a company, don't buy a single product they make. You know, that's, I believe to an extent that is like a valid point, but also it's sort of the thing with like any company. Like, you can try and like try not to support Nestle. Like, Nestle is historically a really terrible company, but they own basically every, to compare to Nintendo, like basically every property IP under the sun. Like, they own Stouffer's, they own, or they used to own, all these brands of ice cream. They own so many things. It's like you can try and like avoid corporations like this, but the fact is you will never fully be able to get away from them. I do believe that's just kind of an inevitability, but you can make a conscious consumer decision to say, okay, this is my line where I'm like, I don't want to support them beyond this point if possible. And I think I'm at that point, and it's a shock to even say that, to even feel that way, but it's where I am now. And maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe there'll be a Nintendo Direct tomorrow, and they'll be like, we're lowering all the prices, we're bringing all the games you could ever want, Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door 2, I don't know. Because, and that's the other thing, is like, I also wish there was a way to support like the developers, because I still love the developers, but of course, from what I understand, they don't get residuals. So it's like, even if you buy the game and you want to support the developers, really you're just supporting interest in like potentially seeing this branch of the IP continue on. In reality, it might not, regardless whether or not you buy into it. So yeah, I guess that's just where I am. Like, there's probably more I could say after the hours of things I've already said. So yeah, thanks for watching. I guess let me know what you think, kind of where you are, if you're still deliberating. I mean, I want to clarify, I'm still like kind of deliberating, but I'm, at least for now, I don't have any motivation or interest in getting a Switch 2, but I'm interested to see like what you guys think. If you want to like make any corrections on anything I might have gotten wrong, or maybe some other thing, if you want to bring some other thing Nintendo did that just like really got under your skin, might be an attributing factor to why you're just like not really interested in supporting them as a company. Emulation is something I did want to bring up. That's a viable option. Nintendo already isn't supporting a lot of their legacy library. Like, how different is it really to just like get their games, their new games from somewhere else? Obviously you are robbing them of that money, and then rob is a loose word. No, in like a capitalist society where now we can't afford anything. But yeah, I guess just let me know what you guys think, comments and stuff like that. I want to do a more positive video after this one. But I feel like I felt obligated to say this with everything going on, especially because like I did have a positive reaction to the last Direct, but then learning about the prices of everything, it put a sour taste in my mouth, and I felt like I had to put my thoughts out there. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want. I don't know. You don't have to, but I upload very rarely, so you probably won't see what next video I upload unless you subscribe. So guess I'll see you guys in the next one. So bye bye.